we see examples of curriculum all across this country that are teaching sexually graphic books to children. That's what's going on. The Bible is clearly something that's like there are all sorts of examples of books that won awards that talk about pleasuring
What's
yourself, having gay sex. I'll dig up some of the examples if you want. Just give me a minute. I'll dig them up by the end of it if you want. But I just want to clear up. If I'm able to provide these examples, then you'll concede that these books should be banned, correct?
No.
You don't need to be hiding behind these fucking MJTs, Lauren Boeberts, and Matt Gaetzes that are only focused on culture war bullshit and saying we should only fight these stupid losing battles that don't help anybody, save money, make more money, get their kids into school and get a good education and whatnot.
Stop putting Trump above the party.
Trump is the party. What do you mean? There's no party. This is a reaction to the populist core.
Shut the fuck up, Mythic.
This proves he's not.
Trump did nothing to warrant being removed from office or being told to resign. If we have Republican leadership that witnesses how every major institution was against Trump and how we were being lied to about most secure elections ever, that's willing to say, I think this guy should resign, we should consider keeping other Republicans off Twitter. What fucking good are they to the party or anyone else?
Hey, Rob, why do you think the Freedom Caucus is only like 12% of the party? Why do you think this is...
Hey, but why are we holding
Hello.
But if you disagree,
hello, everybody. Well, man, it looks like you guys already started. I had fun. This one was a fun one with me and Danabo to design. I look at debates like Pokemon battles, you know, water type, grass types, the whole thing. And I think I did the perfect balancing act for this one. I really do.
I'm already seeing what you did here.
Yep, exactly. I love this. You get the hang of it after almost 2 years now. Anyway, welcome everybody to what is the 64th, 65th, fucking millionth Hippy Dippy Roundtable. I appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy Friday night life, which I know you all must have turned down many date requests and party invitations, and I know Rob wanted to go clubbing, so I appreciate everybody tuning in and making time for the show. I appreciate it. That's definitely, since, as we all know, I am leaving political Twitch forever because I'm a profiteer. Anyway, we're going to... Yes. Yeah, Hunter wants the Friday slot. Now we're going to go into the rules. The first rule is we will not be attacking anybody's immutable characteristics. If you need clarifications for what I consider immutable characteristics, you can DM me while you're on this program. I don't care what you do on this show, but on this show, we gender people appropriately. I could explain this to you why we do it for multiple reasons. If you are interested, you can DM me to get more clarification on that. Also, when I'm talking, nobody else is talking. I'm talking purely to moderate. I am not going to get involved in the specific points today. There's no foreign policy topics, so I doubt I'll be that compelled to get involved. Besides that, I also have a notebook in front of me. This is the first time I've streamed standing up because the chair was too uncomfortable. So this is going to be a standing stream. So I feel like a very synergized businessman who feels better about himself now with my standing desk. So I'm going to be taking notes. So just raise your hand. I'll write your name down if you're having trouble making your way into the conversation. But please do make note of this. And this is very important because people forget this so quickly. That is your last resort, not your first resort. I will eventually get the conversation over to you. But don't think once I give you the thumbs up and I write your name down, you're going to be talking in the next 5 minutes. You can wait for as long as 30 minutes, depending how long the line is, and if the flow of conversation is evolving naturally. And I want you all to realize that right now, so you're not looking at me later like, hey, Dylan, I raised my hand 15, 20 minutes ago. Tough shit, if I'm going to be very blunt with it. It's to help you eventually get involved. It's not to be a crutch, so to speak, okay? Is there any questions about the rules, any clarifications that are needed for tonight's show? No. Wonderful. Then we're going to go into a short introductory period. For each topic, you will have a short intro and outro statement where you cannot interrupt anybody else. I will make liberal use of the mute button since I cannot yell in this Polish apartment. It is an Airbnb, not a hotel, so I will just have angry neighbors, which I won't understand what they're yelling at me, so I won't know if it's a threat or not, so I'm not going to yell. Wonderful. So we're going to start to my left with Cam Higbee.
What's up, guys? My name's Cam. This is just introduction. I'm just saying who I am, right? Yep. Hi, I'm Cam. I make TikToks and I debate politics. I'm a conservative.
Fantastic. To my right, Gappy5.
Hi, I'm Gappy V. It's a V. I mainly play games and do a variety of other things, but occasionally I talk politics. And I would say I'm pretty progressive, right on the line between DemSoc and SocDem, I guess.
Okay. Next.
Obama.
Dead memes. Half Baked Takes.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Half Baked Takes. I was supposed to be streaming on Twitch tonight, but that fell to shit. So I will be posting this to YouTube. You can find me there on at Todd from Half Baked Takes. Same with Twitter. And thank you, Hippy Dippy crew. Thank you, Dylan, for having me on. I'm excited to do this again.
Happy to have you on. Hunter Avalone.
What's up? My name's Hunter Avalone, a former conservative turned social democrat. You can find me on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitch, all under my name, Hunter Avalone. Thanks for having me on today, Dylan.
Happy to have you on. Jeb.
Hey guys, I'm Jeb10. I'm also like on the conservative libertarian side of things. If you were gonna watch Half Baked Takes, watch me instead. Jeb10 on Twitch, Jeb10 RIP on Twitter.
Matty Cakes.
Hi, I'm Maddie Cakes. My mute button's being real cool. Hi, I'm Maddie Cakes. I'm a lefty streamer, in real life digital strategist for a bunch of congressional and statewide campaigns. And I stream on Twitch as Maddie Cakes _, and I'm on lots of other social channels, and I'm great. And I'm correct.
Fantastic. Now we're throwing it over to Mythic Politics.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm a super based fucking communist. I'm here to argue as a pan-leftist, ANCOM, writing a book on political conspiracy, so I may deviate into, why your idea is stupid and the sort of deleterious or downstream implications of your dumb belief. And I'm here to, just basically meme first and ask questions later.
Fantastic. And we'll end the intro segment with Rob Noor.
My name's Rob Noor. I'm a populist conservative father, most importantly. I was super excited this week because I got a dumpster and was able to start doing some spring cleaning, and I'm getting a fence next week.
Fantastic. Oh, and Rob, I saw your message. Sorry I haven't replied to it yet. I've just been busy. We're going to now...
No problem.
We're going to now go into the first topic, which we're going to start with Joe Biden canceling student debt. There have been reports that Joe Biden is looking at canceling student debt. We don't know the specifics of exactly what that'll look like yet. It's all just been reports. We haven't seen Biden come out with the canceling student debt speech. And if he did, I missed it, if it happened today. And so my question to the room is very simple. What do you think of the Biden administration considering canceling student debt? Do you think he should? Do you think he shouldn't? What do you think he should do? I'm going to start with Cam Higbee.
He's got to call on me first. Yeah, so I think that it would probably be pretty fiscally irresponsible to especially cancel past student debt. But in terms of like future student debt, I think that there are probably some better solutions. Like tuition has been steadily rising and outpacing inflation since 1980. And that's enabled by the government just shelling out unlimited money in loans. But if the government were to suddenly stop paying like obscene amounts in loans, or regulate private loan firms and prevent them from like shelling out this unlimited amount of money, the colleges would be unable to like continuously raise their tuitions, obviously causing student debt to lessen, or at the very least stay the way it is currently. Yeah, I guess I'll pass it on to the next person.
Yappy.
I think canceling student debt could be helpful. I think the big problem is that we have to consider how much it's actually going to help people who need it versus don't. I think the majority of student debt is held by people whose incomes are already over 75K, right? Which is well over the average for an individual, or the median for an individual who doesn't have any sort of degree whatsoever. College is, at the end of the day, an investment, right? And I think there's probably some bigger changes we could do than purely canceling student debt one time. We can try to figure out how we can make college cheaper. We can try to offer free alternatives like free community college or trade schools. We can try to just change the public perception on how we see college, rather than as a mandatory thing, but instead as an investment where you have to make a very strong choice, in the same way that you have to make a very strong choice as to whether or not you're going to rent or whether you're going to buy. The only frustrating thing I see from this conversation is I think a lot of people who complain about the issues or talk about how like, oh, look at this person who has $200,000 of student debt might not see the bigger picture. I think there was a tweet I saw the other day or like earlier today about somebody from Yale Law School who was complaining about how he had like $100,000 to $150,000 in debt and how Joe Biden could cancel even a quarter of his debt and it would make a huge difference, even though he already has such a prestigious degree that has such high returns on investment. To think that you are then entitled to some sort of loan cancellation kind of misses the point of how we try to enact progressive policies.
And we're going to throw it over now to Half-Baked Takes.
So it'd be completely like fiscally irresponsible by Biden if he were to just by executive order wipe away debt. He may have some legal opportunities to do it, but I don't think ultimately he will. I just see it as like a poison, like just something that he can't run with in the long term, because everybody's going to end up seeing that if you just I apologize. I'm losing my train of thought. I got like 4 different things going on. All right. Kids signed a loan for money for college. They should pay for that fucking loan. They shouldn't be bailed out by the government. Then we move on to the next step that if you do this, yeah, you may solve this problem for the people that had taken out student loans in the past, but you're offering no solutions for the future. As people have previously stated, once you I'm just gonna pass it. I'm sorry, Dylan.
No worries. It's okay. We can throw it over to Jeb.
What about me?
Yeah, Hunter got skipped there, but
Okay.
um,
It's because I'm white.
Yes. Jeb.
oop. Yeah, so I think that it would be a bad idea, no matter what administration was considering it. I think, as people said, I don't think it does the best to actually dedicate those funds to people who need them, for one. But secondly, I think that we should just consider solutions that actually keep it from becoming a problem again, not just canceling past student debt right now. And I think the way we do that is honestly by ending federally backed student loans altogether. There's no reason why we should allow just one type of debt to be completely exempt from all the regular credit rating requirements and regulations that we have in every other area of debt. If you don't believe that they're necessary, then why are they necessary in the other places? And if you do believe they're necessary, then it's pretty obvious why we've created a debt crisis by foregoing them in this particular instance and making them unbankruptable, all because they are the only debt that an 18-year-old is able to take with no credit history whatsoever. It's ridiculous to me, and I think that by doing all of those things, we manufactured a debt crisis, and we should end that and consider more affordable routes for education, regarding, community colleges being allowed to give bachelor's degrees, maybe encouraging trade schools or working out of high school a little more, and things like that. But I think we should end federally backed student loans altogether.
I'm going to throw it over to Hunter Avalone.
Well, you know what? I hate to be that guy, but I'm kind of the guy who's just sitting on the fence with this issue. This is not something that I have looked into a great deal, but I do think that there are a list of pros and a list of cons that can come from this. So I do think that one of the pros from eliminating some of these student loan debts would be just stimulating the economy so that people would no longer be held to their debt, and they would probably be able to open businesses or just contribute to the economy further. There's also something to be said about the fact that student loan debt does right now disproportionately hurt Black students and people who are of lower income. But the problem with just forgiving the student loan debts is that we are then benefiting the more wealthy individuals who more or less are able to absorb the high cost of that debt that they've gotten themselves into. I think another problem with this is that it's really just a very temporary bandage for an overall larger problem. Of course, part of the reason that a lot of these student loan debts are as expensive as they are nowadays is because the government tried to incentivize student loans. And in doing so, that caused colleges to raise the prices more and more because they realized that the government would essentially loan infinite amount of money. So I think we also run the risk of, if we absolve some of this debt, we then could contribute again to that issue where they're going to hike up the prices again because they realize that the government is once again just trying to incentivize the loans as much as possible. So I think that there are some pros and some cons. Biden's only shooting to get rid of like $10,000 in student loan debt. So I don't really know if it's even that significant at the end of the day. But that's kind of why I'm just on the fence with this issue.
Okay, I'm going to throw it now over to Maddie Cakes.
So I am in favor of the government forgiving student loan debt, and there are a number of reasons why. Now, in an ideal world, and I think it was good of Gappy to bring this up, that in an ideal world, we would have it so that those who have the means to pay back their loans, went to elite institutions or pursued a graduate's degree, make more money, that they would not receive it. The problem with doing some sort of means testing is that the cost of that, all that administrative cost just to means test is absurd, and it would make the actual cost of forgiving debt astronomical. Means testing simply just adds on more bureaucratic layers. So what I recommend, or what I hope they end up doing, is doing carte blanche forgiving all federal student loan debt. Now, some people here might be waxing poetic about the dangers and the financial irresponsibility of this, but the truth is that the economic impact of folks having student loan payments that bog them down, that prevent them from making large purchases, that prevent them from starting businesses, from investing in their communities, from investing in local businesses, the economic impact there far outweighs the potential economic impact of simply forgiving those loans. And that's not only in terms of immediate impact, but looking forward to the future, it's pretty substantial. There's no reason that someone who took out an $18,000 loan when they were 18, and I say this because this happened, not to me, luckily, but to some people on Twitter, take out $18,000 and then even after never missing a payment, making every single payment as they were supposed to for over 10 years, still ended up owing over $80,000. That is absurd. There's got to be a better way to make sure that people get the higher education they need, because that is ultimately what fuels our economy. Now, I think everyone else pointing out trade schools, yes, totally agree with that. Lowering the overall cost of getting an education, absolutely. But a good starting point is just to forgive student loan debt and give people a chance to invest in their future.
Fantastic. I'm now going to throw it over to Mythic Politics.
Yeah, we should cancel out as much student loan debt as we can. The economic impact of this, it would be fiscally responsible. The economic impact would be good. It's basic Keynesian economics. It takes the money away from banks who are just expatriating it and financializing and treating this like a subsidy bubble effectively. And what it would do is it would incentivize people to buy housing, have kids, and invest in student loans, invest in small businesses, which are actual nucleation of economic growth. So the moral and virtue argument is, yes, we should have highly actuated people who are learning, doing everything they can to fulfill their own or to move society in the way it needs to go by having a highly educated populace, having rich R&D technology, and a highly actuated people. And then the economic argument for it would be that under MMT, it's basically a free lunch situation where it's just a net positive to incentivize people to go to education because of the downstream, the long-term implications of the economic growth that would happen as a result of a highly educated populace. Any way you look at it, it's good. The arguments about moral hazard you're going to hear are bad. Means testing is a flop. It doesn't work. We need universalized programs. And the only argument that we should really engage with on this is how to, yes, it should be forgiven. And how do we prevent it from building up again?
And Rob Noor to wrap up intros.
All right. First, This will just cause even more inflation. It's amazing to me to see how many left wingers have been proven wrong over and over again that think that printing trillions of dollars won't have any effect on the economy. Every time they're wrong, it's not them that pay the price. Most of them live with their fucking parents anyways and have never worked a real job in their life. It's poor people in the working class that end up paying more. You're paying more at the pump. You're paying more every time you shop groceries. Fuck it. What's another 40 billion to Ukraine and another 1 trillion to pay off student loan debt and shit like that? I say, why stop there? I'm really convinced. I'm going to change my entire opening. I think Mythic and Maddie totally nailed it. You're right. Think how much will stimulate the economy by doing this. Let's get rid of mortgage debt as well. How about car loans? I have a friend that I know that knows someone that used to work on a yacht for some billionaire. Let's forgive his loan too. Think how much that will stimulate the economy. Isn't it funny watching these lefties all of a sudden talk about more money in people's pockets in the form of forgiving loans and making inflation increase and making poor and working class people pay more, but having more money in certain people's pockets will stimulate the economy. And yet one of these people say they're a communist, which would mean they don't want your money in your pockets ever whatsoever anyways. The truth of the matter is that Joe Biden's doing this because he's massively unpopular. Who could have predicted that? A dementia-addled patient who didn't even campaign the last 2 months is going to be terrible in every way whatsoever, foreign policy-wise, economically. So he realizes the Democrats are going to get shellacked in the 2022 midterms, and he's throwing up a Hail Mary. But sorry to tell you, progressives, he ain't going to forgive all the student loan debt. He's going to string you along just like Democrats have done for the past 10 years on it. This people already said, like Jeb was very good. We should stop the government getting involved in this. That's what's caused the massive spike. Once the government guaranteed these loans, we saw a massive spike in the cost of education. The best thing we could do to make education affordable, like it was in the 70s, where people could work part-time jobs and still pay for their, maybe not Ivy League, but like schools I went to, like state schools. You used to be able to work your way through it. Now, because the government got involved, you have to take out these massive debts. If you do want to make someone pay for it, fine. Take all the money from the endowments of the education places. Like, stop giving any government money whatsoever to any university until we pay back this. Why should my friends that went straight into the workforce because they weren't deemed smart enough to be in college, why should they have to pay for my poor fucking decision because I spent 10 years in college getting a master's degree in speech communication that entitles me to sit here and argue with a bunch of 20-year-olds instead of having a life on a Friday night? So I think it's stupid. The last thing I'll say about it is a lot of people use these student loan bills for all sorts of reasons to personally benefit themselves. Watch a great show like Judge Judy. 1 out of every 5 cases is something like this. Someone, a 40-year-old will be like, yeah, I got tinted windows and went to vacation in Cabo. And Judy will say, what's your profession? They'll say, I'm unemployed. And they'll say, well, how'd you pay for that? And they'll say, student loan assistant. That's the type of shit we're talking about bailing out. Everyone knows that this is a scam, that you could enroll for university, never graduate, use the student loan money, and then it's income-based repayment anyway. So many of these people don't pay it back. There's already programs, by the way, which many of you probably don't know about, that says if you work for a nonprofit organization and reliably make your payments for 10 years, that they will eliminate all of your student loan debt. I happen to work in one of those fields. I work with people with developmental disabilities and home health care. So if you're having a problem, you can always volunteer or get a job for a nonprofit like that and get your loan wiped out anyways.
Okay, we're now going to move into open discussion. Does anybody want to start us off?
I'll go for it.
Sure, Gappy.
Okay, I want to address 2 things. We'll start off with Rob about that last point that you brought up, the PSLF. The Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program is basically saying if you decide to work in public service, you could totally work in a bunch of different fields, but you decide to, for lack of a better word, take the salary-based L and go work in public service for 10 years, make 120 different payments, you work in the public sector for 10 different years, and you're not missing a single payment, then in that case, your loan will be forgiven. The problem with that program is it's very, very, it lacks a lot of transparency. And for a lot of people, they'll go through that full 10 years. And I think about 23% of them get denied for reasons other than it hasn't been 10 years yet. So 23% of people are going through that program thinking they're totally okay. They spend 10 years in the public sector knowing that they're taking losses by not working in private sectors instead, where there are higher salaries and benefits. They go in and apply, and then they actually don't get it, which is a failure on our part. So I don't think that's really like an easy solution to the issue to just have everybody go into the public sector when our current program doesn't really have a proper implementation.
But
while we're on the discussions of implementation, another thing to bring up, and I think Maddie brought up the situation of someone who might have 15K in student loan debt, but then they're actually having 80K after making all these different payments. One thing to consider is that public student loans are so much different than private student loans. Private student loans has a lot higher interest. They have a lot more incentives in order to make sure that you don't know how your loan works and so that you pay more money. And public student loans specifically have something called subsidized loans, where even though there is interest, they don't actually start charging interest until about, I believe, 6 months after you graduate, which is absolutely insane. The government is basically, I mean, it's in the word, subsidizing your education by giving you up to a certain limit subsidized student loans where there's zero interest whatsoever while you're in college. That's absolutely phenomenal. So the idea of, I think I heard it from someone else earlier, canceling public debt and making sure that public student loan debt is illegal, but private loans are still okay, that's absolutely antithetical to the issue. That just makes things worse by switching everybody over to private loans rather than public loans, which provide those types of interest-free incentives to individuals.
I don't know if anyone said that. I think we were talking, or if you're talking about what I said that we should regulate the way that private firms give loans so that they're not giving like excessive amounts of money to colleges to the point, and of course like regulate how the government can give loans to colleges so that excessive amounts of money aren't just flowing into these colleges in the form of loans, allowing them to effectively raise their prices to the moons infinitely as much as they want. And I think people would be much more okay with lowering interest rates or like forgiving maybe like interest past inflation on loans than they would be just like forgiving the debt altogether.
What do you guys think about?
Hold on. I just want to make clear. I did say we should end federally backed student loans, and we should also make student loans bankruptable, which is the reason why private student loans are allowed to be so predatory. Because again, we have allowed creditors to subvert regular credit reporting and qualifying requirements that they use for every other type of debt with student loans by making them non-bankruptable, because to them there's almost zero risk. You can't bankrupt out of a student loan.
Yeah, you know why?
100%.
It's because lawyers and doctors used to go through an 8-year education and then discharge it immediately. So it was because this accrued cost of basically lawyers and discharging their law school debt. Because they knew the system wherein they could do that easily through the bankruptcy law. So they had to exempt it from bankruptcy because there was too many people with high dollar educations gaming the system.
Yeah, but then also
Wait. Okay, wait.
He was responding to me.
Yeah, well, I understand that. So we're gonna have Jeb respond. We're gonna have this back and forth go. Maddie was trying to get in there for a second, so I wrote Maddie's name down, and I'll write down half-baked takes as well. Continue.
Yeah, so that doesn't change the way that exempting them from bankruptcy interacts with the rest of the credit system. The issue is banks are going to qualify someone they are giving credit to based on the risk that they present. And when you make it so they can't bankrupt, the risk they present is automatically so low that the student loan debt growth rate outpaces the rise in tuition costs right now by 350%. It's clear that the way we perform these loans is making it so these schools can raise their tuition, not the other way around. Yeah. And because we are allowing them to be federally backed in so many cases and exempting them from bankruptcy, there's little to no risk from private or public partnered lenders to allow these kids to take out ridiculous amounts of debt at stupid interest rates.
But the bankruptcy has a big problem, though, which is that new college graduates literally have very little assets to surrender to begin with. So kind of like what Mythic Politics was just saying, you will have a group of people that will abuse the ability to bankrupt and just default on that loan. And you'll essentially have people gaming the system. Because again, if you are just entering into college, you probably don't have a lot of assets to surrender in the case of you declaring bankruptcy to begin with.
And I'm not saying I'm against discharging loans, but the thing is, also it's fundamental. It's a fundamental outcome of it. Us using a market-based solution for education after the Cold War, after 1965, with the different federal acts that we used to incentivize education, so as to compete with the Soviets, i.e., tech and R&D and everything else. What we should have done is pulled out college schools from the market instead of allowing banks to be an intermediary and paying basically a holding company 80% of the loan and subsidizing it, which has led to these spiraling costs at 130% of inflation. It's a problem, and the sort of win-win mechanism of the schools has allowed them to spiral up, pulling trade schools, some trade schools possibly, and other non-private colleges, other state schools out of the market would help facilitate that, or just make it universally free to apply. And then, because that's the only way to stop the moral that fixes the moral harm issue, and it stops the accrual of their debt, and it makes the debt a fixing it one time, and it makes it moot going forward.
Listen, I don't disagree
a public
that
option for college would definitely help this issue immensely.
Well, we do
you have to provide a free
college.
avenue.
Community college is largely free. The issue is they can't issue bachelor's degrees, and associate's degrees are notoriously not a great return on investment. If I'm not against allowing community colleges to give bachelor's degrees so we have a free option. But Biden isn't saying he is going to forgive student debt and then create a robust free option. We are talking about, should Biden forgive student loans in the current system? And what I'm saying is that does more to exacerbate our current problems with debt growth than it does to actually fix them. It's just going to allow it to balloon even further after the fact.
What Biden is suggesting is a 10% of for giving up to 10K of the federal loans which are being collected by Navient is effectively what he's doing, and that 10K would be better served as rent, housing, down payment on a house, investing in a family, investing in a small business. Any sort of, if you were going to put a gun to my head and tell me why it's good for the market under the capitalistic norms, I would say it's basic Keynesian economics. Put the money back in the people's hands and just do basic demand side economics.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm never going to be a proponent.
Real quick.
Okay.
Real quick.
Could we? I saw that Robbie tried to get in there. I just want to make sure Maddie can say
Just
what they
10
say.
seconds.
Then I'll have you go, and then I want to keep going. Half baked, you're also written down. Don't worry.
Yeah, no, this is an interesting conversation, but one option that I wanted to bring forward to see what you guys think. There are certain countries where they cap the total amount that any student can pay on their loans at 150% of the principal. So in that way, they're preventing the interest from getting out of control. So you don't have any more situations where you take out 20K of loans and then end up owing 150K. In some other countries, I know in Germany, another option that they offer, or at least for any sort of student loan debt, they have it where you are only on the hook to pay your student loans if you are employed, if you have income. And it works extremely well because that way people don't feel desperate.
Yeah, we kind of have
We do that.
programs here in America currently that people
really
don't use. The problem is people don't utilize these programs. If you want to talk about an education,
because of the bureaucratic red tape they have to jump through. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
That's fine. Let's talk about that. But the problem is that instead, Joe Biden just saying, "I'm going to wipe it away." Through either executive action or Congress is going to come in and pass legislation that allows it to happen. Either one, it seems like it's a little fucked up because you're setting a precedent where the government is going to come in and pay on individuals' debts. And that's where I worry about this. While I might agree with you that wiping away $10,000 in debt for all of these people, yeah, it might do better in the economy for like rent, housing, shit, like bills, like that's fine, but you're not solving the real problem. And like Jeb said, it's if you don't fix the problem, it's just going to keep ballooning. And the real problem is the federal government being in the business of giving loans to every single person who comes and asks for one.
I'd be fine with
I
fucking interest.
That's why the
question. Can I follow up on that real quickly?
Sure. Then we're gonna go over to Rob.
Yeah. Would you be then open? So rather than saying, okay, they're just going to forgive this debt, would you be open, or do you think it would maybe be a good idea if we set some sort of ceiling? Maybe it's 150% of principal, and saying if you have already paid that amount because they have already, contributed, or if we set for future loans saying people shouldn't be on the hook for over 150% the principal loan. What do we think? Could something like that, where we're structuring loans both retroactively and moving forward in a way that prevents these costs from ballooning, would that be amenable?
That's what I'm recommending, because in every other credit market, you don't see loans ending up 150% over principal because they can be bankrupted out of, and by inflating interest rates that much, you are increasing the rate of default. This is the problem that we have with an unbankruptable student debt system, is you remove any incentive for banks not to inflate interest, because the whole reason why you wouldn't have those big interest rates in the first place is because of the risk of default. That is what banks are always looking at when they're qualifying someone who's taking
banks.
credit.
Banks are 8%. Banks are 8%. 92% of the student loans are federal loans. So moving forward, that's sort of like when you're talking about banks' ability to control interest. Unless you're talking about the Federal Reserve, it doesn't really matter as far as the funding. The Federal Reserve invoking that as a funding mechanism to pay for colleges. it's sort of a moot aspect of the argument, and the real problem itself is the fact that we have not done what Germany has done and basically made it baseline free for people to go to college and incentivized because they understand the long-term implications of that are a robust economy with people who know how to fucking think.
Well, on the
Wait, no, it's Rob's turn. I told Rob it was his turn. It's his turn.
Just two things to say here. Sure. Two things to say real quick. First, it is very enjoyable to watch two of my left-wing friends here make the argument for basic fiscal conservatism. We need people with more money in their pockets, and we need to cut bureaucratic red tape. So I guess they would be in favor of ending government regulations that are bureaucratic and make people jump through loopholes. I guess they would also be in favor of tax cuts to allow people to keep more money in their own pockets. I'm sure they were big champions of the Bush and the Trump tax cuts. I'm sure they're big fans of putting more money in people's pockets.
You mean
Trump's tax cuts literally contributed only to the money of the wealthy people. The Trump's tax cuts
all that money in people's pockets wasn't good.
Economics work again.
No cuts for the
Glad you're hitting all
poor.
the points, everybody.
Okay, let's let Rob finish his point.
Why?
Well, because Mythic, not everyone wants to hear from some fucking memeing communist with a shitty mullet and a pretty decent mustache.
The blonde is sexy, though.
That's why.
Are you really using your time, Rob, to insult the dude?
Oh shit! Is that immutable
How many
character?
times do you have to invoke invalidated
Mullets are
arguments?
immutable
You're using-
characteristics, yes.
Right. Yeah, oh, my bad. Sorry for violating the rules there.
I'm gonna
The other
quote
thing I'll
you
say is
on
this,
that.
something that people don't talk about when they say, well, we should just make education higher ed free. There are options right now for higher ed that are near free through certain programs that you could do. But let's say we did that. Let's say all bachelor degrees now will be free to accomplish. All you're going to do is make people spend 4 more years not going into the workforce. And by the way, our higher ed system sucks anyways. I don't even care if it collapses to the ground. It's a bunch of indoctrination bullshit. The product became increasingly expensive year after year after year, and the quality of the product has declined. Inevitably, what we'll see is we'll see individual tutors that can teach people how to pass tests to be able to do jobs like being lawyers, doctors, engineers, other things like that. And you won't have to go take your gender studies, anthropology courses just so you could get your engineering degree. But nonetheless, what you'll see is if you make all of these 4-year universities free, it'll just be the new high school. And so that degree will mean nothing. And so you'll have to get a master's degree to separate yourself out from the field of all the people that just went and got that.
This is a pretty common talking. This is a common talking point similar to the public school argument, but having a baseline level of college education will not cheapen the overall degree. Sure. So long as it's proven that you have a degree.
It's already happened. Absolutely would, Hunter. What are you talking about? How would the value of a bachelor's degree not go down if more people were able to get a bachelor's degree?
No. It's free to enter the college, but it doesn't mean you're just getting a bachelor's degree for free. You still have to work for it. You still have to make it through all the necessary trainings to actually obtain that degree.
Hunter, would the amount of people with bachelor's degrees in the workforce go up or down?
How are you qualifying value?
What
is the value of a bachelor degree?
There's more people that are
so what? You're competing with other people within your wage bracket for those jobs. So it's and for higher wages. So obviously you're going to have to separate yourself somehow.
Yeah, you can
and a lot of people
experience.
Education is one of the best ways to do so.
Take up an extracurricular, bro.
You can do an extra thing. You can do extracurricular. There's all sorts of things that you can do.
Why do people go to college now? Why do people go get a bachelor's degree now?
Listen, half-baked, you can take up an extracurricular like women's swimming. Yeah. You'll dominate and you'll be fantastic.
Like
right?
women's sports, right, guys? Right,
it's
women's
Rob,
sports,
can you tell me?
guys, right?
Okay.
Here's the punchline, right?
Okay, let's reel it. Okay, guys. Please. I can't yell. Okay, let's reel it in a bit. Get it back on course, okay? Next, okay, so Hunter Avalon, you were having an engagement with Jeb and Rob here. I want you guys to finish that. I have Jeb written down. Oh, not Jeb and Rob. It was Half-Baked Takes and Jeb. Sorry. I mean Half-Baked Takes and Rob. Sorry. I get them all confused. I have Jeb's name written down. Okay, so yeah.
Admittedly, it's off subject. I just really was curious what Rob thought about how the higher education was somehow indoctrination, and is he arriving at that conclusion solely because as people become more educated, they're more likely to become more liberal?
True.
No, we could see, you could look at something like Heterodox Academy, Jonathan Haidt, who's a leftist, that's talked about since the advent of social media around about the time of 2004, not only has administrators, which by the way have been growing at 10 times the rate of actual educators, become increasingly extreme left wing, but you also see it with educators, and that we're actually seeing all sorts of, it used to be a free marketplace of ideas, but now more and more, even left wing students are saying they're afraid to actually voice their opinions because they're afraid they'll be canceled because of the culture.
This is based on people saying.
Real quick, I have to talk fast because everyone wants to
God.
interrupt me the whole time. So I'll say this real quick.
This
too.
isn't indoctrination.
Empirically, I'd be able to prove, I could prove that the degree would become worth less because as soon as the government started to get involved in guaranteeing loans, which meant universities and college, I know that a lot of people on the left won't want to hear this, but it wasn't designed for everyone to go to, right? That doesn't mean that some of the greatest Americans I know are people that didn't go to college and they're productive and they're awesome and they're happy and they're making decent money and they don't have debts, right? College was never designed for everyone. It was supposed to
it's only designed
separate
for the
people
wealthy?
out. It was supposed to be designed for people that were at least of a certain education level and intellect to be able to go into a field to require specialization in an education in that field. Please, Hunter, let me finish.
No, I got to
let me finish.
No, you're isolating based on wealth.
If you let me finish, right? I sat here
isolating
patiently
based
and
on
let
wealth.
everyone finish their points. I did, right? So what happens is, let me get back to where I was going. So what happens is when the government got involved in guaranteeing student loans, that encouraged a bunch of people that otherwise maybe would have went into the workforce to go and get degrees, which ended up inflating the amount of degrees that don't lead to people getting jobs that are productive in the country. And so the value of a bachelor degree has declined in two ways since the government's got involved. One, your ability to get paid and money and a job for that degree, the symbolic nature of it. But second, the actual education that you're getting. That's also declined, as we can see when you look at United States, for example, education levels, they've been declining versus people around the world for some time now. So in both of those ways, we could see the government getting involved devalued that education. And if we made it totally free, it would continue to devalue the bachelor degree even more.
It's just a sheer numbers game. If the thing that separates most people by like wage category is education acquired. And when we start talking about forgiving these loans, like you're going to end up just forgiving the debts on the most well-off in society.
Well, to clarify, we're talking here about really quickly. We're talking about here. We're not talking about forgiving the loans in this context. We're talking about college or having a public option that is available for free. So I don't understand how you're saying this would cheapen it or this would set it up so that everybody has a loan. It shouldn't be based on your wealth. There are plenty of very smart people that might not have the financial means to obtain that degree. Wouldn't we want those people to still be able to get a degree?
No, I see what you're saying, but what I'm saying is when you have more degree holders in a workforce, you're ultimately going to have less jobs. You're going to have less jobs that like high income jobs for those bachelor's degrees to fill. And then those bachelor's degrees are going to end up going and working in fucking service industry or retail rather than going and getting executive positions or managerial
having
positions.
Having a more productive society altogether is going to benefit the economy even more so, right? Having people that are well educated,
but most people
really
go
crucial.
to college to earn more money. Hunter, most people go to college.
How do you earn more
and they
money
shouldn't be.
by
Yes, they do, but they shouldn't
learning?
be kept from there if they don't have the financial means in the first place to go.
Hunter, let's test your supposition here. So you say
Why
that a
do you
more
only want
educated
wealthy
society
people
will be,
going to college?
you say a more educated society would be better. And so that's why we should have free 4-year universities. Why stop at 4 years? Why not 8? Why not 12? Wouldn't that be a more educated society that would be better?
You mean medical school and like
sure, free medical school, and let's go beyond that. Let's go beyond doctorates. Let's put a degree a tier above that. You need to go for 24 years. Let's have free for that too. Wouldn't that be more education?
Rob has no argument, so he has to somehow go down this slippery slope of why don't we make it so everybody gets free car insurance too? Lol. That's not what we're talking about. Okay, we're talking about. Hold on, stop.
You don't have a response.
We're still talking about. We're still talking about degrees.
I have
we're still talking
but I
about
didn't get
education.
A actually cut in because you keep talking. So first and foremost. I'm not advocating for free 24-year college. Of course, after a while, that's going to have cost, but because that would probably not be financially attainable even for the government to finance. So if we're talking about just the bare minimum of a 4-year degree, that is going to ultimately lead to a more educated society. And if people want to pursue a further degree, yes, they can probably use the money obtained from whatever job they got with the bachelor's degree to then finance their higher education. Also, just to be clear, I'm not advocating for the abolishment of private education. There should just be a public option alongside it.
I also agree that we were sold a bill of goods. I also
Wait,
sold a bill of
stop.
goods.
Jesus. I put too many I put too many talkers on the talking panel. It's the list. I want to go down the list a little bit because it's Jeb, Gappy, Mythic, then Half Baked Takes in that order. Cam, did you just raise your hand? No, okay. Mythic.
No, I wanted to say something a while ago, but I wasn't able to get it in.
Okay.
But can I say something real quick? Why the fuck do people talk to their audience while we're streaming instead of listening politely to what people are saying? I might be a fucking asshole, but I'm sitting here
You're
listening.
recycling
You
points
assholes
from
stop
Steve
talking
Harvey.
to your
Why
fucking
listen
audience
to
and
it?
listen.
Okay,
You're
That's
fucking
the
worthless
first time when it
pricks.
was wrong.
Guys,
Why listen to it
Okay,
again?
okay,
let's reel it back.
okay. Can we not? Let's.
Watch
Okay. Fucking Jesus Christ.
We can't help it
Fucking
if Rob is
pathetic.
triggered, okay? Let's just
Okay.
give him a break.
Let's
You're
keep-
pointing out the bad
Do you need to
that
go
you
back to your
fucking
safe space,
lefties
Rob?
have.
Do you need to go
No,
back
I
to your
don't
safe
need a
space,
safe
buddy?
space, Hunter. Wait.
second
I'll just
flag up.
become a
Put a
liberal
second
like
flag
you,
up.
Okay, no,
Grift,
no,
right?
I'm done.
Everyone, I'm a liberal
yeah.
now. Send me money like Hunter.
Guys,
Oh,
stop.
right.
I'm done.
You're a liberal.
Guys,
We're good on this.
guys.
I'm
Really
just
quickly.
Okay.
Wait. I
Right
need
there,
to
buddy.
have this.
Okay. Let's mute everybody. Okay. And this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna unmute people when it's their time to talk. Okay. Wonderful. So we're gonna go. Jeb said they had something to say a while ago. But they said we moved on, so I'm gonna go there. So next is Gappy. We're just gonna do the list for about 5 or 6 minutes, okay? Because you guys wouldn't listen, okay? Gappy. Wait, Jeb. Okay, you said you had something to say, but then moved on. Okay, Jeb.
Sorry, I don't remember saying. I'm sorry. So I think, the conversation has clearly moved past. What I'm saying is the conversation is no longer about should Biden forgive student loans. I think now we're on the solutions to keeping student loans from getting as high as they are now after the fact, if he does or if he doesn't. That seems to be what everybody's arguing about. What I do want to clarify is some of the things that we were talking about small businesses getting invested in and whatnot because of student loan forgiveness and yada, yada, yada. And I think this takes from both sides of the argument, which is that more than half of business owners in the United States don't have a bachelor's degree or higher. But what they cite isn't an inability to go to school. What they cite is better financial prospects outside of school with the time. So they'd rather not make no money for 4 years. They'd rather make money for those 4 years. So they go into things like sales and start their own business. So on one hand, I don't think we're going to have a bunch of people flooding the bachelor's degree market and completely devaluing the bachelor's degree because a lot of people are still just going to choose to make money with that time. But I also don't think we're going to see this massive small business investment if we do have free college. One of the things I also want to point out, because this is something that I was fed for a very long time, looking at the rankings for education systems internationally, on pretty much every list I'm seeing, the United States is number 1, with one list saying we're number 3, and we got there by being a market-based education system. So I think when we talk about just throwing out the market-based education system and completely revamping it with a different one, or kind of rigging the scales against private education by making like every state school free, we need to consider the quality that we have been able to reap from a market-based education system. Now, the extent to which I do think we can create a free option, which I don't even think it's to an extent, this is creating a free option, is allowing community colleges to give bachelor's degrees. We already have community colleges. They're already largely free. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to provide a bachelor's degree, and it would solve the problem while still allowing us to attack the issues from a credit and finance regulation aspect that lead to a 350% outpacing of tuition cost by student debt. So I don't think we need to largely make public or nationalize the United States education system. I think just allowing community colleges to give bachelor's degrees would be more than enough, because we don't want to ditch the market-based education system that's given us the quality that we have now.
Okay. So I've unmuted everybody, but I'm hoping that we can not devolve into that again when I'm trying to talk and to moderate and everybody's just yelling over each other. So I'm putting a firm line down that if you talk over me at any point going forward, right, for like anything that I think is just blatantly ignoring me, I'm just gonna mute you, right? I'm putting that firm line down right now, okay? Because that just got way out of control too fast. Gappy, you were next on the list.
Thanks. I just want to correct a few things. The first thing that I think Rob brought up was that American universities are shit. This is just patently not true. I don't think any other country, in terms of international students trying to come into our country in order to go to our universities, I don't think any other country has similar demand. Even for like every one, like École Polytechnique in France, there are like 10 top tier universities specializing in a specific field or in an industry or in a degree in America. So to say that like American universities and higher education just fails, it's completely awful, doesn't actually train people for jobs, is just objectively not true. The demand is absolutely insane. Another implementation idea that was brought up was making community colleges 4 years. There's a huge difference in the amount of income you make with an associate's degree versus a bachelor's degree. I mean, when you look at a lot of these job postings, they're asking for bachelors or not associates, right? So to say that we can just make community college give 4 years and just make that free isn't actually as easy as it sounds, because implementing those upper level courses when there's so many different fields of specialization, that's the difficult and the tougher part of implementing a college curriculum. A general thing that came up generally during this entire thing is that a lot of people are just arguing about like the concept of whether we should or shouldn't have people going to college rather than talking about the issues of implementation. I think ultimately this entire issue of college debt forgiveness comes down to how we implement these policies, which isn't as sexy as just yelling like we should forgive all student debt, or, you know, people should just stop, you know, not be stupid as 18-year-olds and just sign on to all the debt and just, you know what they're doing. I think a good example of like an issue with some of the implementations that came up was just citing Keynesian economics and saying that, you know, we'll just give them more money and they can spend it on other issues. We have to also consider where that money's actually going to. If it's just going to people who are already on like the top 5% or 10% in income, I'm not really sure that's exactly what we want to do. I don't think we would be saying that, oh, well, it's Keynesian economics if we give Jeff Bezos $1 million tax break and say, you know what, he can spend that money, it's going to have a multiplier effect on the economy.
You're talking about means testing, yes, but the problem is with what you're saying is it costs more money to police it. The bureaucracy that you would create through doing means testing has the perverse effect of costing more than just universalizing the aid and then taxing, because you already have a mechanism to tax progressively through the IRS.
The bureaucracy. You could make these simple application processes. Like, you don't have to make it.
There's been study after study sociologically. I can link the PDFs. They're too long for you to get into now, but trust me when I say that means testing has been proved sociologically to cost more to distribute benefits to the society. It's
that may be true in like with certain policies, but with this specifically, it could be done in a relatively manner. You wouldn't have a relatively easy manner, and you could just do it through the Department of Education, which is already established. We don't have to like establish a new fucking like bureaucratic office to take care of this.
Wait till the people who wrote those white papers.
Wait. Yeah, there we go. See, I've installed fear in the people. I am a mini tyrant. Okay. Okay, so continue, please, Mythic. Finish your point. Then I want to go to the rest of the people that want to talk. I'm gonna go. I think Appy wanted to respond. Who else wanted to respond to that?
Good. Oh, not responding.
I'll throw it to Rob. Then Jeb already went, so I think I want to get through the list first. Like half baked. So Mythic.
Yeah, he just said more of the same. Yes, no, means testing has been shown sociologically in the distribution of Social Security and other things, and specifically in the college when they do cursory stuff as far as how to eliminate the debt and what to do in the economic implications of reducing and or canceling student debt. They showed, I just read an abstract today that talked about doing it at the Federal Reserve level and not creating bureaucracy through which it would necessitate people to be there 24/7, paperwork, committees, figuring out what to do, whatever. It's literally cheaper just to universalize the relief and then tax it out, which is already, and you already effectively have a mechanism to recoup that through the taxation progressively. It's literally a non-issue. But the problem is that the means testing is used as a proxy for people to argue against a thing that they just fundamentally don't want because they're either invested in it or just don't like the idea or think that there's other moral harm, and they invoke economics but it doesn't work in this case.
Gappy?
Two things. If means testing is, according to the study, like more expensive than the actual original bureaucracy itself, then we actually have to come into call the question as to whether or not it's even worth canceling student debt. If means testing would, in order to make sure that it actually, is a progressive policy, ends up costing more than what we actually would like, and not means testing it might result in us predominantly giving forgiveness and predominantly giving more income and wealth to people who are already well off, right? The other thing I want to point out is that if we're just reading an abstract and we're not reading the whole study, I'm not really sure we should really be discussing that type of stuff. It doesn't really matter what an abstract say if the study is ran like complete shit.
Excuse me, I misspoke. What I was talking about is I jumped to the part that talked about literally the mechanism through which the federal government would do that, and why and a separate study talking about why means testing is perverse.
Yeah, I think, but the problem is like, I don't care about any of this anyway because I don't believe
Then
that
why are
we
you
should
here?
cancel the student debt. No, I'm saying that I don't care about means testing because I don't think that we should cancel the student debt. But if you're talking about using means testing as an avenue to like canceling some people's student debt, I don't see, like, I think there are ways to make means testing less expensive, like almost the same way that we like distributed COVID relief, or like
Yeah, it was universal.
Like if you had like this,
We
is your income
universalized
bracket.
that. You're exactly right. We didn't say you're using an example of something that was given
let
away
me
to
finish
everybody at no cost,
Yeah.
and then saying we could use something like means testing like that. You're exactly
Well, if I
right.
could
If
finish
the
it.
means testing you
Yeah,
want is
right.
universally giving everybody who wants a COVID shot, then we should 100% do that. I agree.
So I'll
No,
finish
some
what I was
states-
saying now.
some
I'll
states
finish what
did
I
do
was saying.
individual
I wanted Cam to respond to
so-
that. That was directed toward Cam.
So like what you can do,
We
and
gotta go to Rob.
look, I don't even care about what you just said because you didn't even let me finish, and you were attacking like an argument that I wasn't even making. So like what I was saying is that you can make the people do the work for you, right? So like
What?
or I guess you could like
Show
if-
me
if
how that-
you're
tell
like-
me how that
you could-
works.
You could have people apply to have their student debt forgiven, and then they could fill out the little circles that say what their income bracket is. Sure, like I guess you'd have to have some testing, like to figure
You
out
have
they're
to
telling
test
the
their
truth or
income
not.
to make sure they're telling the truth.
Yeah,
In
right. You have
Head
to-
Start, SNAPs,
but you don't need
welfare,
to do that for
every
single person.
in every benefit program, they've studied this, and there is a fucking heavy cost with the bureaucracy revolved to fucking giving that money out.
And
You're
it's
literally-
higher than if you were to make it universal?
Yes. Like, what do you
Oh
mean?
my
Well,
fucking
because-
Christ.
hold on,
Bloody
because
words.
you're
Why do I
punishing-
have to tell you the fucking the free market fucking
Hold
liberal
on.
how the fucking markets work? I don't understand. You fucking
Yeah.
recoup it through taxing. What are you talking about?
Not in
What do
every
you mean?
Every
circumstance.
single
Not in
benefits
every.
program. They analyzed every single benefits program in this
Snaps,
study.
Heads Up. There was a list of like 15 programs that I.
Yeah, so
Do you
not
know
in
like
every-
the author or something like
if you
that?
were to
I'm just
make
curious.
it
I'd love to
I
read.
can link it. I
universal.
can link them in chat.
Thanks,
I can
man.
link them in chat.
My
Yes.
Christ.
Yeah, but not in every
I may-
circumstance is it more expensive to means test than to make it universal. But Mythic is
You're
largely
saying that
right.
apropos of nothing.
Hold on,
You're saying
hold
that
on, hold on.
apropos of
No,
nothing, by
Mythic,
the way.
Mythic, I'm with you. Mythic is largely right that means testing is expensive, and that is why conservatives rail against. I mean, as conservatives, we have railed against administrative bloat for decades now. I mean, when we say administrative bloat, we mean the cost of things like means testing and things like that. So, but I also agree with Gappy that at a certain point, if it becomes so expensive to both make it universal and to means test, if both of those are so expensive, then that's where I agree. We do need to analyze if it's even fiscally worth it to forgive the student debt in the first place.
Nobody said it was expensive to make it universal. Through MMT, the government creates, they're
It
saying
is
that the
expensive.
military, the government does not use taxable, government does not tax and spend. That's not what they do. They create money and spend it and then absorb the inflation, the money in equity, the excessive money that would lead to inflation. They reuptake it through taxation. That's just how basic economics work since like, I don't know, the mid 80s. That's
Yeah,
just
well,
basically
but-
what they
but
do.
our-
So
So
if I may-
it's not, the free
may-
lunch problem
Yeah,
is
it'll be Rob.
literally we.
Okay.
I want to throw it to Rob.
This is exactly the argument, and we've heard big left-wing communist socialists say this for a long time. Yes, bureaucracy is expensive. Means testing is expensive. That's ultra. Yeah, Mythic, I know it's tough. Try to listen to someone else talk, or you can go ahead and talk to your audience while I'm talking if you need to. Why are you here, anyways? But so we heard them talk
I'm
about
here
this.
to
We have these
fucking
massive
literally
programs.
push back
Wait,
on fucking harebrained ideas. Like what is your argument here? You think MMT is a fucking communist argument? What the fuck kind of capitalist are you? What the fuck are you talking about? What are you doing here if you don't know the basic terminology?
Okay.
well, you wouldn't know because you don't listen to anyone. You constantly interrupt.
You
So
reiterate
wouldn't
and
know.
you gish gallop. You're literally fucking you're lancing fucking straw man. You're going through an ancillary conversation and you're not addressing the underlying points. And you're literally calling MMT a communist trope.
You
or
haven't
talking
heard.
point?
You
What
haven't.
are you
You
talking
haven't
about?
heard. You haven't heard what I have to say.
Drop the non sequitur.
I
You
heard
just
it the
throw out
first
words like
time.
gish
I heard it
gallop
when the
and
first
shit
time
like
when it
that.
was Thatcherism and the second time when it was
This is a
Reaganomics.
great. This is a
I've
great
heard
show,
it.
Dylan. This guy's a great guest here, right?
Thank
if
you.
only he lived up to his fucking haircut.
Third time winner. Third time winner. Third time winner. Let's go.
This is-
future
Yeah,
future,
really
future
helpful.
champion.
Okay. So, okay. So, to be fair,
Can I
Rob,
finish my
Rob,
point?
you did bait him with insults, but I do
Yeah.
agree. He shouldn't be interrupting you.
He
so
deserves
you can
it.
do-
He's fucking
can-
insulted everyone. He
Okay.
deserves it. He's a big
Tell
boy.
him he
Okay,
can't
okay,
hold
wait,
flame.
I fucked that up.
wait. Rob, please finish.
Sure. So this is what we heard, like, oh, it's too expensive to means test, so we just need to give the government total control of all of this stuff, and we'll reabsorb it through inflation and taxation. Right. So when you're paying more at the pump and shit right now because of these big government programs and even more government control, remember, they say, don't worry, we'll fix it all, and we'll absorb it through inflation. And then, yeah, so that we could have a bunch of people that were predominantly better off in the first place if they were probably likely to go to college, the poor and working class people will now, through inflation, be able to pay more. But that's okay because the communists will say, well, that's okay. We should have non-private property and things like that. Anyways, the government should own the total means of production. Don't worry, big government will take care of you. No thanks. I've seen what big government's capable of when they do what they do now, which is even less egregious than what communism would be. So what you hear when people are like, literally, he's making an argument. Hunter, like, do you guys have like a literal fucking like mental problem? You
I
can't.
think you have a mental
stop
illness
yourself?
because you're literally.
No. I
equating
sit here
communism
patiently and
with
let you all
socialism.
finish.
We
I
gotta
sit
let-
here patiently and let you fuckers finish every time. Okay?
You talk so
About
long and say so
imitation.
little. You talk so long and say so little
okay,
is the problem.
okay,
Rob's
okay,
allowed,
okay,
dude.
okay. I've said 3 times to let him finish. If I think he goes too long, I'll jump in. The next person to interrupt Rob is going to get a 30-minute timeout. So really think if you want that, okay? Really, like think it real hard, okay? Think it real hard, okay? Rob.
Okay, so I just wanted to respond to Gappy real quick, and then I'll finish on that point. To Gappy, he said, when I said U.S. universities were no good, I don't mean vis-a-vis other universities necessarily. The education system at the primary and K-12 level is beginning worse vis-a-vis the rest of the world. But when I say it's bad at the university level, less and less people are using the degrees they graduate with in the actual job they end up getting. And I think just general education and competency is going down because there's more of a breadth of discussion instead of focused on specific things. So the degrees and the education is getting worse. When we talked about bureaucratic means testing being bad, this is the reason why government bureaucracy in general is bad, which is why we should protect communism. And I was going to say, like, well, this SNAP benefits, would you get rid of them? Would you get rid of Head Start? It appears the answer is yes. Mythic would say to get rid of those things. It will be a shit show. How would we have a system where SNAP benefits weren't means tested? Like, even if you ever, I guess it would be pure communism. That's the only, or for example, child tax credits or things like that are programs designed specifically for people with children. WIC. Well, we can't means test for WIC. So if Hunter says, I have another baby, well, we have to send him WIC because we can't means test. This is nonsense. There has to be means testing, and there are ways to make it less affordable. And I would like to read the studies that say that it would be cheaper to just give everyone money than to means test. It's nonsense.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw it to Mythic because I want Mythic to respond because Mythic's very passionate about this. And Hunter, we're gonna have that. Jeb, I'm gonna write your name down, and Half Baked takes your next on the list, and then it's Maddie. Then
You can just skip me.
You're gonna skip
You
you?
can just skip.
Okay.
You can just skip me. Yeah, I was just gonna talk to Rob about something kind of again irrelevant that he said, but go ahead.
Okay, Mythic.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. There is mean testing in all those heads-up programs. They literally use a metric which is called the official poverty measure, OPM, which is used where they take what the basic baseline, what it costs for you not to starve, and then times it by 3, and they use means testing to dictate whether people get that as far as TAMF benefits, as far as SNAPs, which is food stamps, direct money aid. There's other things. There's of course means testing and all those things. And the studies that I linked in the chat, which you will not read, I'm sure, but the studies that I linked, which you will not read, shows the perversity of trying to means test when you could just basically save money and get the money to where you actually need. An anecdote is in Texas, I believe that they attributed like something like $300 million, I forget exactly anecdotally, but they ended up only distributing 10%. Why? Because 90% of the money was gate kept through the means testing mechanism, which prevented them from distributing the money as was intended in the spirit of the bill. So the means testing is literally the problem. The non-universal nature of these programs is the problem. It's literally cheap it's free effectively for the government to do it as long as they're doing things which they understand in the long term will incentivize the economy so as to pay for themselves, and then they just implement a progressive tax and recoup it on the end. It's literally as simple as that. It's modern monetary theory. Everything else is weird seething cope. I literally don't understand, but I went ahead and linked those in the chat if you want to go ahead and not read them later.
Can I respond really quickly to that?
Sure, I think Rob has a right of way there since it was a response to Rob, but if he wanted to respond, I think he would have jumped at it. So I'm going to throw it to Gabby.
I looked at these two studies or whatever, and you mentioned that they looked at SNAP in like 15 different programs. I just control F SNAP in both of them. Neither of them, which is one about the potential savings to Social Security from means testing, and the other one, which is about student debt cancellation. Neither of them bring up SNAP or these 15 other programs. They just talk about Social Security and Medicare. And if that wasn't bad enough, they also bring. Oh, there's a third one. Okay, well, if that wasn't bad enough, they bring up Social Security and the issues of means testing Social Security, and they say that if we were to means test Social Security, it would substantially increase the operating cost, and it would eliminate most, if not all, of the savings from a plausible means test. So while it would increase the cost, it's not like that we're losing money as a result. We save money by means testing, but we also increase the cost by means testing. So it eliminates most of the savings, if not all of it. It's not going to increase the cost at a cost like the taxpayer or anything like that, at least from whatever you're bringing up here. I just find it really frustrating when we're bringing up like random studies that, like, frankly, I don't think you've read.
I read the operative parts. I don't know. I'll have to review. I don't know what section you're reading from. Number one, but again, you're referencing
and there's zero results.
There was a third one. I'll find it. I was sorry. I did a lot of pre. I'm sorry. I should have notated my sources better. I'm sorry about that. However, I will say this. Again. You're doing a callback to the tax recoupment, or excuse me, of the taxpayer recoupment. Taxpayers' money do not pay for programs like this. That's literally not how the government literally creates money out of thin air. Not to use a Jekyll Island Federal Reserve fucking trope, but literally under MMT, they create the money they need to spend and then recoup it through taxation. So to control inflation. So that by and large, I don't really see what you're saying, but I'll go ahead and give this another cursory scan.
Well, I'm not saying.
Can I just respond
to a study that said all it does is just neutralize the savings?
Rob, I'll let you respond if you can make it 10 to 15 seconds because we have other people who have been waiting for a while.
15 seconds max.
Okay, I will literally count.
Wouldn't a progressive tax also be means testing? That's it. That's my question.
No, that's not what means testing means.
No, when you're reporting your own, and because the reporting is part of the tax form. That's like a soup. There's no administrative cost to that. You're literally inputting.
No, that's not true. The administrative cost is the IRS. That's why we recently had to hire far more IRS people. The IRS costs tons of money. If it was just a universal flat tax, wouldn't that be much cheaper? We wouldn't have all that means testing and bureaucracy. The same is true. The same is true.
You still need to know the income in order to do a flat tax, though. The reason why it's not more expensive to do a progressive tax rate, and I agree with you on the flat tax, but the reason why it's not more expensive to means test in that regard is because even with the flat tax, I have to report my total income. With the progressive tax, I have to report my total income, and then they change my percentage rate based on that income. There's no additional information they're gathering.
But the reason means testing would be expensive in programs like SNAP and things like that, it's the same thing. You still have to self-report for everything to be able to get these things. It's that you have to meet certain criteria to get benefits. With the progressive tax bracket, it's not just, yes, with the flat tax, everyone has to report and then gets a percentage of what they would pay as the tax. But you need a special bureaucracy to determine what those levels will be. And that bureaucracy is why means testing would be expensive. So the same would be true. It will be more expensive to have a progressive tax bracket for the same reasons. But I'm assuming that most of the left-wingers would support progressive tax bracket because they would say, well, you would be able to tax them more and get more benefit out of, yes, there will be an increased cost in the bureaucracy by having this means testing, but it would be worth it because we're able to tax them more.
What Mythic is saying is in his world, you don't have to report your income at all to get your loans forgiven, whereas with taxes, you have to report your income either way. I think that's where the difference would be there. I'm trying to strengthen your argument by better informing it.
Universalized program under a universalized modality, there was no criteria. The only criteria would then be the cognitive limitations of the potential people applicants for the college, right? And so it wouldn't be financial, which is basically one of the litmus tests. They sort of with the FAFSA, with the Pell Grants and everything else, they have to sort of not only pinch the fat on you to see how much meat is on your bones, but also see how much your parents have, just so they know whether you're worthy of going in there.
Okay, so I'm going to move over to the list. There's three people who've been waiting for a very long time. Halfback Takes, Maddie, and Jeb's also on the list, but he's talked a little bit here, but I'll keep him on the list. Halfback Takes.
Yeah, it just seems like, again, I know you're going to just tell me that making it universal is somehow is more efficient than means testing, Mythic, but going back to just wiping these loans away, it just seems like all you're helping is the most privileged and the most well-off in society as is. If you go to school and graduate and you take out loans along the way, you graduate, you're on track to pay those loans off. The people that end up getting fucked and add a ton of have a majority of this debt and typically have no ability to pay it off, are the ones that take out loans and then don't graduate. And those are the ones I have sympathy for, and those are the ones I do want to reach out to, and those are the ones I think we can find ways to simplify the bureaucratic process and maybe alleviate their student loan debt, like we do with programs like the federal workers program, and then they have a frontline healthcare worker one. So if you work in certain industries for long enough, you'll get it paid off. And then a lot of times now companies are offering to pay off student loan debts as like a benefit or an incentive to get hired on at a company, which I think we should probably encourage companies to do more of. And it probably would work out considering we have a labor shortage.
Okay, next is Maddie.
So it made me happy to hear how it takes to talk about how you don't want to help the wealthy elite, and I'm encouraged to hear that, because unfortunately the way our system is structured right now, we are making college really only accessible to those who have the financial means to pay for tuition, and that usually means that they came from wealthy families. Now, why we have a robust and prestigious upper academic system right now in the United States is because for a long time, this was the vehicle that people could use, that Americans could use to have upward mobility in society. It was something that was the great equalizer, where people could come from any background, but if you worked hard and did well, no, I'm not done, you can wait, then you could make a living for yourself and do well. Here's the problem. We're seeing people that are the only people that are able to actually go to college or to go to good institutions that then have a higher propensity of leading to high paying jobs are people that come from wealthier backgrounds. So I'm just curious why all the conservatives here want to reserve college as simply something for rich kids and wealthy kids. Why wouldn't you want to give kids who come from impoverished backgrounds or backgrounds where maybe they don't have the financial means to pay for college? Why wouldn't you want it to be accessible for them without making them beholden to 30 years?
This is wholeheartedly untrue.
So,
I got offered more money in student loans because I was fucking poor. Because I was poor, they offered me more money.
That's really great anecdotal evidence.
What do you mean anecdotal? That's the standard. What are you talking about, Maddie? That's a fucking standard.
Because of additional need.
That's what we're saying. It's not only accessible to rich kids.
Point. Thank you,
An impoverished kid who signed up for college as an individual without parents here. The government will shell out tons and tons of money to you.
They will give me whatever I want.
Free aid and also in subsidized and unsubsidized loans.
The rich kids don't need loans,
and so can
they don't need loans.
No, but I'm saying, is that what you're saying? Is that in America right now?
Okay, no. What? Okay, so I'm gonna have Maddie respond to that. Okay. And then I'm going to be looking at wrapping up this topic in a second, but everybody's raising their hands. Could most of your things be used for ending statements? Or do you? Okay, we're looking because we're going on the hour and a half mark, so I just want to make sure we have time for all the other topics. So I'm just going to finish the people on the list, which is Maddie's going to finish the statement. Then we're going to have probably a little bit of response to that. Then we're going to go to Jeb, who's on the list, and Gabby. Gabby somehow got on the list. Lucky Gapster. Maddie.
Yeah. So I guess I'm curious now. So, and great. Listen, if that is true, I am very happy that you guys were able to get the financial aid that you needed to go to college. That's fantastic. But here's the thing. I'm just wondering, by that anecdotal evidence, are you then suggesting that any kid who lives either below the poverty line or in a family where they just don't have $100,000 saved up and put away in an account, are you saying that any kid anywhere can go to college for free because of the government to a 4-year institution? Like, is that the argument you're making? You're saying, oh no, everything people are saying isn't actually true. You guys can go to college for free anywhere. Is
You
that
won't go for free.
that
You'll
your
incur
argument?
debt, but you'll be able to go.
You also believe in unicorns? Like, are you serious?
No, it's a fact that regardless of like your economic standing, your financial situation, college is accessible to you. You're not going to go for free. You'll incur debt, but you can go. I didn't have any income. I didn't have a job. I didn't have parents supporting me. I was unable to get a cosigner for a private loan. I was still able to go to college. I got plenty of aid and grants from the federal government. I got plenty. I took out federal loans, which, like I've said before, I have a quarrel with the government continuing to shell out infinite amounts of money to colleges, allowing them to raise their tuitions. But it's absolutely possible, and it's absolutely accessible. I think that we need like reform.
What's happening is that that's not the case for everyone, especially people who have parents.
That's it. No, that's the case.
People have parents that don't make enough when they make too much to qualify them for like carte blanche loans. But
Did you
they
miss the part where I didn't have parents? Like,
I know, I fucking heard you, and I'm saying I'm glad that you were able to go and do that. But like, I'm also saying,
but
okay,
if I can do it, then everybody else can do it as well.
I had poor parents.
It's far more common in another scenario. There are people where their parents make too much money for them to qualify for a lot of those low-income loans, but they don't make enough money to actually have been able to save for college. So those kids are like, okay, well, I can basically be roped in to 30 years of loans where I'm paying hundreds of dollars a month. I'm not going to be able to start a business. I don't know if I'll be able to have kids or buy a house, but that's what I'm going to have to do.
They think it's going to be financially
able to compete on the job market. Like, that is what I'm saying.
Well, if it's going to pay off, then
upward mobility in this country has plummeted over the last 30 years, and the student loan crisis is a massive factor.
Maddie, I would agree with what you said earlier about the cap on interest. Like, I don't think that we've established that the majority of debt comes from federal loans, and I don't think there's any reason for the federal government to be charging more in interest than like the inflation rate, right? So like, we should try to match the interest rate pretty close to inflation at the very least. Otherwise, the government's just stealing money from people that have taken out loans, and there's no like valid incentive for that other than like, oh, the government's saying like, oh, we're going to make people pay back their student loan quicker. But if that student loan or student debt doubles, then they're not going to pay it back at all, and the government's losing money. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So I would agree with you there, but I would disagree with you when you say that college is only accessible to the wealthy, because it's just not true.
How do you match an interest? How do you match an interest rate?
We already had a system.
Okay. I'm sorry, but we've got 7 minutes before the hour and a half mark. I just need to ask Rob, is it something you can say for the ending statements at all?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I can say that. No problem.
Okay. I just have 2 people unless we got to get through them. Jeb?
I can make mine a closing statement too if you want to wrap it up.
Gappy, is that the same
Can
thing?
we go to the Bible subject next?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so we're going to do ending statements. Wonderful. I appreciate the cooperation from everybody. You will all not be put in the gulag today. Maybe tomorrow. Pol Pot Dylan Arc. So we're going to throw it over to Kim Higbee for the first ending statement.
Oh boy. Okay, so yeah, like I said, college is absolutely accessible to poor, impoverished people. I, again, left my parents when I was 18 years old, had essentially no financial connection to them whatsoever. I wasn't dependent on their taxes. I had no support from them. I was unable to get a cosigner. I still went to college, and I only have like 10 grand in student debt, which is a lot of money, but it's doable, right? I'll be able to pay it off. It's not too much. You're going to incur debt. You're not going to go for free, but you'll be able to go and you'll be able to get your education. I guess I'll just, while I'm wrapping up, I'll address real quick a question that Mythic asked. How can you like match the interest rates to like inflation? So obviously inflation is constantly changing. However, like, I guess you can do like, you can look at averages. You're never going to get it exactly, and I guess have it like match long-term interest rates, but you can try to like, I guess, estimate or project what the interest rates might look like. Might be a little tricky, but whatever. I think there should be a cap, and we shouldn't be charging like ridiculous interest rates, especially on loans from the federal government. Again, I think a lot of the problem stems from the federal government just shelling out unlimited money to institutions, them continuing to raise their prices. I think that we should probably regulate private loan firms and make sure that they're not doing the same thing, and that the people who actually need loans are the ones getting them. I guess I'll just wrap it up there.
I'm going to throw it over to Gappy.
I think it was just disappointing that a lot of people were just talking about random shit when it feels like, frankly, myself included, none of us are really qualified to talk about it. Just some highlights. Like, we were talking about just only reading an abstract about student debt. We were talking about facts and about 15 different programs analyzed in studies that just didn't even mention the programs, about how like Keynesian economics means that we can just have a multiplier effect if we give out money, which when most of the money is being held by, or most of the debt is being held by people who are making more money, it's essentially tantamount to trickle down economics in terms of that argument. We heard that American universities are bad. We heard that somebody went from 14K to 80K with loans due to interest, right? Without acknowledging that that's probably due to private loans. Government shell infinite amounts of money to colleges. One university, the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, had to take out insurance on Chinese international students because they rely so much on tuition because Illinois does not fund their universities that they had to take out insurance due to that. That's also just not true. I think it just really sucks that a lot of people are going into this conversation without really knowing a lot of information. I think the person who talked the best, besides myself, of course, is Hunter, because I think we can all take a step back from this debate and learn that, it's okay to say you don't know a lot of information or to try and just learn as you go, right? Rather than just instantly saying we shouldn't cancel any student debt or we should cancel all student debt. At the end of the day, college is an investment. People are forgetting that a bachelor degree makes you so much more money. And that's the difference between, say, forgiving all student loan debt versus forgiving debt from payday loans. There's a huge difference there because there is an actual return on your investment from college that we forget to consider in this entire conversation. It just sucks that we haven't really brought evidence from any of the sides brought up today. Any sort of evidence that actually supports their argument. Either we just made it up or it's out of context.
Okay, next I'm going to throw it over to Jeb, and I need to use the bathroom, but I think everybody gets the idea. Like Jeb, Hunter, then over to Half-Baked, Rob, Mythic, Maddie, that order. Okay? Wonderful.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think I issued quite a bit of evidence on my side as far as how credit reporting works, how credit qualifying works. I'm very experienced, expert level experience in how credit qualifying works. When you make it so there is no risk of bankruptcy or true default on a loan, you make it so they can inflate interest rates as high as they want. I think that as far as what Joe Biden should do with student debt, we're kind of split, but I think we're not split on this panel as far as student debt forgiveness, whether it happens or it doesn't, being enough here. The reason I think that we should eliminate federally backed student loans and the immunity to bankruptcy for student loans is I think we need a major market reset in our market education system. And while they're not following at the same pace that the debt is growing in tuition cost, they are obviously following that track. And we could get a better handle on tuition if people, again, weren't getting unlimited access to funds. I do think education is accessible largely to the people who need it, but I don't think the bachelor's degree has as great a return on it for everybody or for as many people as a lot of those of you think. I think the reason why people want student debt forgiven so bad is because they are finding that their bachelor's degree isn't returning as well as they thought it would. If it was returning as well as they thought it would, they wouldn't have any problem with their student loans. So I think we should be overhauling the federally backed student loan system, possibly getting rid of it, so that we can reset the market on school tuition, because our private education system has led to the #1 education system in the world, but I think everybody agrees that it needs a market reset so the tuitions can calm down and people can afford it. And that might include allowing community colleges to give bachelor degrees in a lot of circumstances. That would probably raise costs a little bit, but not nearly as much as completely nationalizing education in the United States.
Am I next? Okay. Yeah, I think at the end of the day, this is a really complicated issue. I think that when we're talking about Joe Biden canceling the student loan debts, there are pros and cons here, but at the end of the day, I am kind of on the side that the cons seem to be outweighing the pros. I do think that a much better long-term solution would be to nationalize education to a degree, not all the way. I mean, obviously not every form of education, but to have a public option when it comes to college, I think would be really beneficial for Americans and American society and the economy alike. So at the end of the day, yeah, I don't really have the strongest opinion on this subject, but it was nice hearing everybody else's opinion too.
Yeah, so I apologize for falling apart at the beginning of this. Tend to get a little nervous when it comes to doing these things, so hopefully it won't happen on the closing statement. Basically, I just think it comes down to like financial literacy. All of these people that ended up signing these loans at 18 didn't really know what they were getting themselves into, and it spiraled into a situation now where we have a massive debt bubble, or like a massive bubble, and it's bound to burst. I don't know exactly what the ramifications are going to be, because like Jeb has brought up so many times, it's with no ability to declare bankruptcy. It ends up just being a shit show for everyone. And then lastly, the ones that didn't graduate are the loudest voices on the other side. The ones that aren't that didn't graduate, don't have a degree, are now left without the benefits of I think it's increase of $1 million over the course of your career in earnings if you have a bachelor's degree versus having only a high school education. So I'll wrap it up there.
Okay, I think he said me next, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, I think the moral at the end of the day is that this would actually be designed to help people that generally are more well-to-do. Poor people that don't go to school will end up paying, and it will be paid primarily through inflation. There is no such thing as free anything. It doesn't exist. There is no such thing as free government programs. It gets paid eventually to people. And we can see that the more of these massive government programs we have, such as during COVID, the more transfer of wealth from the poor and working class we've seen to the upper class. This would have the same effect. Just to address a couple specific points, Maddie was talking about only wealthy people would be able to go to college there. Maddie, if you go back to 1971, do you know what the average cost of tuition for a 4-year public education was? For 4 years, it was around $8,500. That was affordable for almost anyone in this country. Even if they weren't able to afford it, they would be able to get a part-time job to pay much of that, and they would be able to take out a private loan that would be far less burdensome going forward in the future than what we have in this current system. What changed? The U.S. government got involved in backing these loans. The more the government got involved in interfering in free markets, now it's becoming untenable. The solution isn't to forgive these loans and make poor people that didn't go to school pay more through taxation and through inflation. The solution is to get the government out more and stop having the government get involved, because that's what artificially raises the cost of these things. Gappy talks about, and I address Gappy's point about saying U.S. education. Just because U.S. education is deemed, a lot of people come here. I'm not disputing that. I'm saying the quality of the education and the value of a bachelor degree has declined significantly. He says that bachelor's degrees will get you more money than if you don't have it, but Jeb did a fantastic job of answering that, which is, okay, then I guess we don't need to forgive their student loans because they're doing more well off than the people that didn't go to school. So why wouldn't we be helping those people that didn't go to school that are apparently doing far poorer than those that got the bachelor's degree in the first place? There's other things that we didn't really get into that are worth talking about. I actually enjoyed the means test versus universal program. I think that would be a great debate topic. I'd love to hash that out more. I think that one of the things that could be hopeful is online university is going to make university cheaper in general if there isn't this sort of, government interference. And that's because you won't need to pay for the sort of on-site infrastructure. You won't have people move. So if the government gets out of the way, there's a chance that this stuff could get cheaper anyways, which is good. And I did think it was funny watching left-wingers talk about more money in people's pockets is good. Regulation and bureaucracy is bad. Right. You sound like free market people. Like I'm totally digging it. Last thing is, if we say that the flat tax would still not consider a means test thing, then fine, we could totally disband the IRS by having a sales tax only. Would everyone who's afraid of means testing because it's bureaucratic red tape that costs money be in favor purely of a sales tax? It'd be something I'd be interested in. And the last thing I'll say is just a stylistic thing. I love jabbing back and forth with people. I think it's fine. I don't mind if people insult me or whatever. That's all good. But seriously, anyone who's talking to their fucking audience like we see right now instead of listening is a sack of shit who doesn't respect anyone who's watching this, doesn't respect the rest of the people on the panelists, and doesn't respect Dylan's time. So y'all can go fuck off. I don't care what your politics are on it.
Mythics?
Okay, so anyways, whatever the fuck this piece of shit was just saying, it was fucking yada 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 yada. Jesus Christ, bro, how you gonna Gish Gallop yourself? Good lord. I've never heard, is this a filibuster? Like, are you trying to go into hour 2? Anyways, yes, mean testing is fucking basically bad. It's perverse. Financial implications of Levy Institute, RE student loans, the economic authorities that these liberals on this panel will fucking agree with. Fine, our simulations show that student debt cancellation results in an increase in GDP, a decrease in average unemployment rate, and little to no inflationary pressure over the 10-year horizon, while interest rates increase only modestly. So it's a net good. Shut the fuck up about anything else. RE means testing, quote, or from the Center of Economic and Policy Research, quote, the cost of administering a means test could substantively add to the operating cost of the program. This would eliminate most, if not all, of the savings, meaning that any benefit that you would get with the savings is taken up by the means test. I don't know. That's rather unambiguous. I don't know. That's rather unambiguous. If your argument that this one thing that I found, which is not the end all and be all, and I understand it's incumbent upon me to find a better source citation. This is one of many things I read in the days going up to this. It shows at best the argument as it stands right here from the information we have at hand is that it's a net wash trying to do means testing anyways. By and large, if we can get back to commie shit, I think cultivating people's minds is good. Straddling young people with a lot of debt that they are unable to really wrap their head around the long-term implications of is bad, especially if they don't understand compound interest and how much that'll affect their ability to leverage or how much that'll impact their credit report when it comes to other implications that'll help them get their life going, i.e. car loans and houses and other stuff like that. Again, to default to an economic or capitalistic argument. But I would say that also one thing that didn't get addressed within this topic is how 70% of those in default are first-generation students and 40% come from low-income backgrounds. And the majority of people who default, 94% of them, white borrowers repaid 94% of their loans, while black students have only recouped 5%. So unless you're making essentialist traits about the different peoples in America, there seems to be some systemic inequity that this social the student loans thing is predating upon. So in order to have a broader discussion about this, we need to fix the baseline inequity. We need to fix the mechanisms through which we subsidize or promote education. I say pulling these colleges out of the market and just using the magic of modern monetary theory that we use to fucking have the biggest military in the world that is not recouped by taxpayers. I think that we could do the same thing towards college education and reap the benefits long term.
And Maddie.
Cool. So I think it is a fantastic idea to give student loans. Ideally, that would be done with a universal wipe. But the number that's been shown to otherwise make the biggest impact is 50K. So I would love to see that happen. It's economically smart. It prevents people from being hamstrung when making major investments that drive consumption, that drive our economy forward. And by circumventing any sort of red tape that would be imposed by means testing, you would actually have a program that is running very streamlined and is running as intended. And people who argue that that is somehow going to increase inflation or that somehow there's going to be this doomsday scenario are only displaying their lack of economic understanding. And I say this as someone with an advanced economics degree. My advice to you would be to study up on macroeconomics and have a better understanding of how that works. Looking at you, Rob. And if you say something worth listening to, maybe I'll shut the fuck up to my chat. Thanks.
Okay, I also forgot to put this disclaimer at the start of the show that nobody on the show, unless they say otherwise, is an expert on the topics we are discussing. Please also get information from other sources. Do not get all your political opinions from a roundtable on the internet. That is a terrible idea. We are now going to move on to the next topic. The next topic is going to be about the Bible in schools. Specifically, I want to ask the question simply that a lot of books recently have been banned from learning curriculum and sometimes even banned from school libraries entirely. One high-profile example was Mouse, which was not banned from schools, but was removed from Holocaust teaching to curriculum. There was, of course, the conversation surrounding CRT. And recently, there has been a response from some activists that, okay, what about the Bible? And so the question for the room is simple. Should the Bible be banned from schools? Because, you know, the Bible also has graphic content, etc. I'm going to throw it over to Cam Higbee to start us off.
Yeah, sure. Real quick, Dylan, where did you say Mouse was banned from?
I think it was Tennessee. It was like a Tennessee school district. They used it to teach about the Holocaust, but they kicked it out of the curriculum because there is a page in the book where they're stripping to put them in the gas chambers, and they tried to say that was sexual content.
Okay, yeah. So I would say that's fucked up. I don't. I've read Mouse. I don't think that it should be banned from any schools. I know there was a tweet floating around for a while ago that was like claiming that a bunch of books were banned in Texas, like Mouse, To Kill a Mockingbird, or the rest of To Kill a Mock. There was one more. I forget what book it was. George Orwell's 1984. That's what it was. Completely untrue. There's not a single district in Texas that has banned these books. But when we're talking about banning the Bible in school, I think we need to like. What do we mean when we say that? Do we mean banning the Bible from like a teacher bringing the Bible in her purse and reading it at lunch or praying at lunch? Are we talking about a student doing that? Are we talking about giving instruction on the Bible? If we're talking about giving instruction on the Bible, are we talking about the teacher instructing her students or his students that the Bible is absolute from an objective perspective and that it's the right religion, Christianity is the right religion to go by? Or are we talking about the teacher giving instruction that the Bible exists and that Christianity exists? If we're talking about that situation, then I would say that's fine. I was in school. I was taught about the Quran. I was taught about the Torah, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and that's fine because I think kids should, at an appropriate age, like learn about these things and know that they exist and learn about world culture. But I absolutely don't think that the Bible should be taught as like the correct religion or from an objective position, I guess. But in terms of like just banning it from schools altogether, I would say like, of course not. I think that'd be ridiculous. I think I should have the right to bring a Bible to school and read it at lunch if I want, or at an appropriate time where I'm not receiving instruction.
Okay, Gabby.
Yeah, this issue comes down to a very fundamental concept called the Establishment Clause. Us as a government really shouldn't be endorsing any sort of religion over another or condemning any religion over another. I think it's either we get all of them or we get none of them. Either we allow the Bible and we also allow all other religious texts in as well, even if it's like, I don't know, some Satanist guide or whatever, or we don't allow any of them. We can't really make any sort of statement one way or another. Private schools are free to do whatever they want, but public schools, we either have to allow everything or allow nothing. So I think ideally we would be teaching kids about all these different religions, their general ideas, and like the history behind them and how they spread and influenced the rest of the world. Since religion's a pretty fundamental part about world history.
We throw it over to Half Baked.
Yeah, so I think like teaching about it can typically be done without actually teaching from or reading from the book. So as long as the teachers aren't using it as instruction material, I typically am not going to have a problem with it being used as like an educational tool, especially if you're using every other religious book. I think there has to be a distinction made though, because obviously we want these books in the library so kids themselves can go and read them for educational purposes. Again, educators should not be promoting religion in any manner in terms of like public schools. Again, like Gappy said, private schools can do what they wish.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Hunter.
Yeah, so of course it would be a constitutional violation to tell students that they cannot bring their Bible to school. It would also be a constitutional violation, however, to teach the Bible in school in a way that advances that religion. So I agree with most of what everybody said thus far, that of course you have a constitutional right to bring your Bible to school and read it if you want, but it gets into pretty bad territory if the teacher is saying that this is the truth or this is the best religion or anything of that sort. Then you are definitely getting into unconstitutional territory. And mind you, I fucking hate the Bible. I also despise God. So I have been recently on my anti-Christian crusade. I really, really despise the tenets of Christianity. I think that it leads to bigotry, homophobia, and is usually based on just delusion and, people praying to their little sky daddy and whatnot. But at the end of the day, that is a religion and it should be respected according to the Constitution. So even though I despise it, it should still be allowed to be brought into school because that is a constitutional right.
Gonna throw it over to Jeb.
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand the context of this topic is a literal troll petition, right? Nobody was accused of teaching the Bible as truth in a public school. I want to make that clear. But yeah, I agree in the sense that everything taught in schools obviously needs to have justifiable educational context, right? So there was one, I think everybody so far who's talked agrees that the Bible can be in a school, like if a kid is practicing their own religion, teachers practicing their own religion, or if they're teaching it in a historical context. But Gappy did say one thing I want to push back on in my opening statement, which is like, if you're going to allow one, allow all. I don't know that every religious text needs to be allowed as far as in curriculum. I think obviously you need to go on a case-by-case basis for historicity. So like a Satanist book, I don't know how historically relevant that would be. So I don't know if you need to put that in every history book just because the Bible and the Quran and the Torah are all also in there. But yeah, I don't think the Bible should ever be taught in a public school from a perspective of endorsing a religion, only from a historical context as a historical document. That is it. That's the only thing that a public school should allow. Private schools can teach whatever they want. If you want to have the Satanist Academy at some point, that's fine. But other than that, no.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Rob.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't so far, and doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of disagreement here. Dylan's original question about mouse. If mouse was banned, it shouldn't have been banned. My understanding from at least the story I was reading was it wasn't banned. They just decided that they were going to use other books for that.
Yeah, it wasn't banned. I said it was stripped from the curriculum specifically.
Yeah, and they were replacing it with other books. Now, if part of their reason was because there was this scene where people were undressing, it's still kind of the thrust of what Dylan's saying is true, right? If that factored into their, and I think that's stupid. I think clearly there are things like if you watch Shawshank Redemption in school, we did that, and there are scenes I think where there's nudity, not sexualized nudity, but sort of to show the horrors that was going on with that. I don't really have a problem with that sort of thing. In general, I'm going to agree with what a lot of other people said here. First off, there's two distinctions. There's the question of should the Bible be being taught and the question of should it be banned. And those are two distinct things. Now, even though I'm a Christian, I think that I want our education system to focus on math, literature, civics, things like that. And it seems that they're getting worse and worse at that every year. I'm tired of the indoctrination and the pseudo lefty religion that's being taught and foisted on people in the forms of critical race theory, SEL, all of this, shit about the LGBT community. How about we stop all that shit and get back to teaching people math, things like that, and leave their parents teach them those other things if they desire to do so at home. But that doesn't mean that I want to replace that with even values that I have, such as the Bible. We should focus on those core things. Should it be banned? No, it shouldn't. You shouldn't tell kids that they couldn't bring their own Bible, or you shouldn't not be able to talk about it. And I do agree with Jeb. I see where Gappy's coming from. If you're going to teach one, you should teach them all. But you can't teach them all. I mean, there's thousands upon thousands of religious texts. We can't teach them all. So sort of the big three of the three monotheistic religion and maybe some of the other bigger religions, it makes sense to talk about in a historic context. But at the end of the day, I'm less interested in even that than let's get back to having a country with great education that makes the best engineers, that makes the best mathematicians, that makes the best doctors, that makes the best educators, writers, and things like that, and stop with sort of trying to indoctrinate our own moral values.
Okay.
I'm going to the restroom, but I could still hear.
Got it. Mythic?
Okay, great. Yeah, so nobody read the source material. This is by and large about a Florida House Bill 1467 and one atheist Andy sea-lining about doing a satanic LARP to show the underlying mechanism here that he takes exception to, which is that people can arbitrarily have it's the fight back of the inevitable outcome of people petitioning to have books removed from school, which will be allowed in this House Bill, the Florida House Bill 1467, which Ron DeSantis is signed, and it's currently it's up to each school district to implement their own version of it, which would necessitate a hearing if parents had concerns over books that are allowed in the curriculum. So what this effectively is along with the Don't Say Gay and the wedge issues of CRT. The diversity, equity, inclusion, learning outcomes, and the Common Core. It's basically a long line and a refutation of those things, wherein reactionary parents can petition to have books that are science-based or have the values and virtues that we want to indoctrinate in children or socialize them with to be good members of society and not hateful little bigots and transphobes. Allow them to those books to exist. So what this is about basically is someone using a sea-lining, a Satanist using the example of the Bible. Specifically, he stated that the casual references to murder, adultery, sexual immorality, fornication, rape, bestiality, cannibalism, and infanticide preclude it from being used in a lesson plan, which everyone has correctly already stated that it already isn't. And it's not about what people can use or teach in schools. It's about what's included in their library and used as a part of the curriculum. So a lot of this conversation is already kind of moot to the point. But the point is, I think the real panel discussion is now, since we all agree on that, should reactionary parents get to dictate what people with masters in education and library sciences have think are good supplementary educational materials for children? What inputs could a reactionary parent even have in that regards, and should they have it?
Is everybody gone?
I think Maddie has.
No.
Oh, sorry, Maddie.
That's okay. Yeah, so I mean, I'm just, who doesn't love a bandwagon? I'm on the bandwagon with you guys where, I think you're right. Like, I don't mind if the Bible's taught in a secular fashion where you're teaching it in terms of history. Maybe you're teaching it in terms of like literary value, because like it or not, it is probably the most influential piece of literature in the last, 2,000 years. So from that, like just academic standpoint, sure. And I'm not really as concerned like with you guys. I'm not as concerned with schools teaching it in term like to indoctrinate kids, because the Supreme Court has routinely upheld the division of church and state in that regard. In fact, there are a lot of different Supreme Court decisions that reinforce that point. I think I like that Mythic brought up that a lot of this stems from that Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, and how essentially we're seeing a lot of folks become empowered to have whatever books they want banned, not because it's necessarily inappropriate, but because maybe it suggests certain ideas that run contrary to their political or social ideology. And in that case, I do find that concerning, because part of school and getting an education is being exposed to multiple different points of view and being able to think critically and think for yourself. You don't get that when you're just fed one flavor of thought, of ideas, of ideology. That's just not a good education. That's going to create some pretty small-minded and extremely stupid people. So I think it is troubling that these laws are being created in order to narrow what kids can be exposed to in public school, and it worries me. So that's my opening statement.
Okay, who wants to start us off?
Me, yeah. It's not about the CRT Don't Say Gay bill. It's about House Bill 1467.
Yeah, so it's hilarious to me, Mythic, how like arrogant you come into this. You're like, oh, so nobody's read the source material. You were probably too busy talking to your audience.
You apparently didn't.
If you let me talk this time. Yeah, so I asked
though.
Danabo when you were too busy talking to your audience what actually this topic pertained to. And he said that it was the troll poll, just like I think it was Jeb said, right? Because I actually thought that it was pertaining to the case where the football coach was praying on the 50-yard line. So don't come in here all cocky, crying about like nobody read the source material. First of all, like there are plenty of different things we could have inferred that the source material actually was. It could have been the Supreme Court case.
Did you read the linked article?
I didn't read I did not read the
Danabo linked an article.
Did he? Where did he link it?
Did nobody read it?
Where was it?
I definitely read it, and I read the bill. I read the other things. I read that guy's past.
Did you read the article or the abstract?
I read the full article.
Okay, I see it. Yeah.
I mean,
it's largely about House Bill 1467.
I mean,
what he petitioned for. He petitioned the school districts to have the Bible excluded on those grounds because he doesn't think it's conducive to the learning standards of the Florida school districts. Is explicitly what he was doing in a satirical sort of LARPy Satanist way.
Yeah, so I mean, regardless of the reason why he did it, right? I think parents should have the ability to petition their school district about books they do or don't want in their kids' curriculum. And his LARP is going to prove the structure behind that, which is that parents will be able to go to the hearing and they will be able to have their voices heard and say the Bible is a historically relevant document and it should be taught in schools, and it'll get upheld, and it'll prove exactly why that Florida bill isn't that consequential. Because yes, absolutely, parents should be able to petition for a hearing to get a book removed, because it's a hearing. People are going to have their voices heard, and a district is going to decide whether it's in the parents of the kids who go to those schools' interest to have that book removed or not.
Do you think what banned books do you agree should have been banned historically? Do you think Harry Potter should have been banned? Because
I mean, no, but
that's
I
the book.
do. I don't agree that any individual book should be banned in essence of what the book
Like,
is, but I do
it's the
believe that
principle
parents
of
who
the
go to a
matter.
school district should be able to petition to get whatever they want removed from curriculum out of that curriculum.
if a
'cause
bunch
their
of people
kids
Give
wanna
learning
get
it.
the
local
Bible
school
removed.
districts
I don't know,
a
I think,
ton
like,
of
maybe-
power.
Hold on, wait, really quick. What if a bunch of parents come forward and they want to get the Bible removed?
From school curriculum? I mean,
Yeah.
I think their kids would be undereducated, but they have the right to do that because
Exactly.
it's the school that their kid's going to. But I don't think it would but again, it's not a petition that would guaranteed get the book banned. It would be a petition that would lead to a hearing that would allow people to have their voices heard. And I think there will be enough people in that district saying, I mean, the Bible is a historically relevant document, just like if they tried to ban the Quran, the Torah, or any other historically relevant religious text.
And
I
I
just
think it's
think that if they're
important
gonna
to
teach
talk
the-
about what's going in context of what's actually happening, where we see examples of curriculum all across this country that are teaching sexually graphic books to children. That's what's going on. The
Like?
Bible is clearly something that's like there are all sorts of examples of books that won awards that talk about pleasuring
Name
yourself,
one
having gay
example,
sex.
name two.
But I'll dig up some of the examples if you want. Just give me a minute.
they
I'll
being
dig them up by the
taught?
end
All
of
right,
this if
I'll
you
give
want.
you
But
a
I
couple.
just
You don't
want
know
to.
any,
I just
okay.
want to clear. I just want to clear up. If I'm able to provide these examples, then you'll concede that these books should be banned. Correct?
No.
Let's get the
Right,
example.
you won't.
I
So
would
it doesn't
wanna see
matter
the
what the
example
examples
first
are.
to
Yeah, I would
determine
have to
that.
see why you
Right,
you-
right, right.
Wait,
So
wait,
I'll
you
provide.
were-
I will provide the examples. Don't worry. I will provide examples of that and exactly what's being taught in some of these places. Some of the books are being taught, but that's the sort of thing we're talking about. The Bible is clearly different, and the irony is we already have a system where we're not teaching values from books like the Bible. Anyways, it's not being taught as instruction.
God.
It's just being talked about as historical reference. If a
Good.
book, for example, has for example, a book. I wouldn't recommend this for children because of the source material. But if you were going to have a serious conversation in 11th or 12th grade about the book Lolita, even though the material in that book is grotesque and disgusting, it's grotesque and disgusting in a way that is itself pointing out that that sort of thing is grotesque and disgusting. So there is educational value in that, as opposed to a book that's glorifying sort of underage sex or glorifying promiscuous behavior, things like that, that shows graphic material. That's what parents are upset about. And of
Bible does the
course, we
same.
should give
And a lot of this
right.
argument
Of
comes down
course,
to
we
like
should give
the
parents
age
the right
range.
to be able
Yeah.
to have us say that.
Wait till he reads the Bible.
There's this book that
Right,
even
it's
talks about
completely
like
different.
stoning people and like hating gay people and stuff like that, and they talk a ton about sex. It's really
Are we
crazy.
talking
I don't know
about?
why
I
we
think-
haven't
Are we talking? So there's no historical value in the Bible, correct? It's not different.
There is.
That was
showing
not the claim that was
expenses
just
of
levied.
extreme-
That was the claim that was just levied. If you'd have listened instead of playing video games or talking to your audience, you would have heard that the claim
I
that I
never-
levied
I
was no
literally
one's
have
teaching the
not seen my
values of the
part of it
Bible.
all, buddy.
No
Okay,
one's
wait,
teaching
wait.
the
Okay,
Bible.
wait. Okay, so everybody, when you talk over each other, nobody can hear what's being said. I'm gonna have Rob. I'm gonna give him like 10 seconds to finish this point, and then we're gonna move to other people who want to talk. I'm gonna start writing names down, but I'm gonna see if it can the conversation can transform naturally. Rob, 10 seconds.
Yeah, no one's saying that we should teach what the Bible says about homosexuality. We're saying that it should be taught as a historically relevant document. That's different than material that might glorify sexuality. That's just something that won some sort of child literature award.
Well, and I think what's important is the fact that when you teach the Bible, right, in a historical context, there are sexually graphic parts of the Bible, there are violently graphic parts of the Bible, and those typically aren't the parts that are brought up in a history book. So we as Christians can admit that no, the Bible's not different in the terms of education, because no matter what, every passage of the Bible that you're putting in a history book needs to be held to the same historical relevance standard that any other book should. But what I'm saying is the same reason why we act like there's a, quote, gridlock in Congress when really it's just issues that the people aren't very decided on yet. I think the same thing about these book banning hearings, right? You're going to have a crazy parent who petitions, might even get enough petitions to make it to a hearing. But once it actually goes into the process, I really don't think the effect is going to be a bunch of religious texts or historically relevant books like Mouse getting banned, because once it actually gets into that bureaucratic process, the bureaucratic process is actually very good at not implementing changes that don't have a good deal of public support. So I think parents should always have that right to petition and to get a hearing. And then the hearing is where, actual voices from the majority of the decision makers are going to be heard. And you're not going to have this massive issue where a bunch of religious texts or a bunch of mouses or anything like that or catchers in the rye are going to be banned.
And you may see some communities, some very like religious extremist communities, or like you may have niche areas that they do end up making the mistake of banning these books. But I think, like Jeb's saying, like broad brush, typically you're not going to see this as a problem nationwide because people are just more
I think
intelligent than
You
that.
don't even really
I
need
think
the
it also
Bible in
depends on-
school to
I think it
You
also
go ahead.
depends on how you're teaching the Bible. Like, I think that it's definitely very relevant as far as learning about the historical document and learning about it in regards to education, just like you would any other religion. But again, it needs to be taught in a way that is not glorifying the religion or propping it up. So, for example, it should be taught to kids that, hey, this is the Bible. And for example, virtually not every, but many major stories in the Bible are actually just plagiarism of much earlier Greek myths. Or, hey, they talk about Exodus here, but actually there's no evidence whatsoever that the Egyptians ever had slaves and that there was ever any kind of mass exodus. And also, the Hebrews are famously good at keeping records, but there's no record of anybody named Moses. So I think that if anything, if we're going to tell the kids about the religion, they need to hear the entire truth and the fact that although this is a historical document, it really has no basis in reality.
Hold on,
True.
I don't
No,
think.
I think
And
absurd.
specific,
Absurd.
if I could say
Wait.
real quick, this
Yeah, yeah.
again is
Okay.
not about the Bible being taught. This is not about it being taught. It's about whether it should be available in the library. I think it should be. Number one, it's if debate Andes need the source material if they're going to construct arguments against the contents therein. The Bible is not used under the curriculum in anything other than an evangelical, Catholic, or a parochial school or whatever. It's not used in any sort of curriculum in public schools, anyways. It's moot, and we're all arguing a point that we all agree on. It isn't the reality anyways. The
We're
question
also
is
talking about
whether
the relevance of teaching of like the
Teaching
Bible
about
in
it. You
school.
don't
Like
need it
Rob
to be
brought up
there.
the values in the Bible
Yeah.
that should be taught to kids. Like, that's fucking delusional.
Where did I say
Yes.
that? Pay attention.
I don't
You
think
literally said it in
Also,
your
there are
opening, dude. You
studies-
said the
No, I
biblical
didn't.
principles
Yeah.
should be taught to the kids. Yes, you did.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I
No,
never
I will
said that. I
say-
said
Does
that.
anybody else remember hearing that?
No.
Right.
Rob
No,
said there are
right.
structures that are currently keeping that from happening. He never said that should be
Right.
the case. He just said that currently, right
Exactly.
now, we already have
Well,
controls.
hey, I
that
may
are
have
keeping that
misunderstood
from
you. That's
happening.
fine.
Okay.
But
fair
like,
This
you
enough.
don't
is a
even
lightning rod
necessarily
for
need
issues
the
about
Bible to be there. You can like teach about the Bible or the Torah or the Quran, teach that they exist without actually having to have them there. Should it be available in the library? Yeah. Is there really much utility to like having a board for banning books? Like, not really. I would understand like if a group of parents want to ban like a library book, like let's say 50 Shades of Grey somehow made its way into the school library. Like, sure, if you want to petition for that to be banned, like I understand, but like I think that most books, like generally, I think this would be needed to used so rarely that it like there's not even a purpose in having like a completely separate board for doing this. I think that most books should be available in a school library.
the interest
if I could
is
just-
the
if I could say-
mechanism. The interest again is the mechanism
okay,
by
Rob
which they
after.
would do this. Is the mechanism by which they would do it, because I scanned the bill, Gappy. I'm sorry, I scanned it because it seemed a lot of fucking legalese referring to insertion of subheadings into other state statute. So I scanned, and what I gleaned from my code, it doesn't have explicit methodology for the enactment of these things. This seems like a nebulous bill that is used to curry favor with voters, that even is going to be spottily enacted. I didn't spot a pay for, so I don't know how they're going to pay for these, and I don't think that Republicans are basically for adding additional funding to a school department, especially for something like dealing with these books, although they might specifically in this case agree for funding. So I think this is a weird thing. It's going to have spotty implementation. I didn't spot a pay for, and all it's going to do basically is curry favor with reactionary voters and give people who are very motivated to get stuff stricken out of the record a mechanism to remove stuff from libraries. And it's basically a non-issue. And also, I want to say that the Bible should be in schools and it should be taught because Jesus is a base communist, and everyone should know that.
He was
I
a
agree with the
homeless
point.
Oh, we
brown
should talk about that.
Wait,
man.
mean,
next
he
I said it
name
was
dropped
Rob.
me.
I said Rob, but did you name drop Gappy?
Yes, I mentioned not reading the whole bill.
I can wait. No problem.
Okay, Gappy, then Rob. And Maddie, I
Oh.
wrote your name down.
I just want to say I agree with Mythic that a lot of these bills just feel like it's mainly there to, appease to reactionary voters and voters within their base for primaries and eventually the upcoming election. I think one thing that came up with, and I know this is a different bill that's not really at issue here, but with the Don't Say Gay bill is I think there was some emails going around from parents who were receiving emails from teachers saying like, oh, we're not allowed to teach gender identity, so we're not going to refer to anybody as he or she. We're going to only use the term they, and we're not going to refer to people as husband and wife. We're just going to say significant other because we don't want to be in violation of the bill. That's just like one example of how like the implementation is a little bit wacky and out there, which makes it feel like that it's a lot more of just like a play into their audience base for the upcoming elections rather than, actually caring about, trying to save the kids in their own words.
True.
Right.
So a couple things to say here. First, Hunter, the idea that if we're going to teach in a historical context what the Bible is, we also have to teach your version of why it's not true is fucking insane. That would be equally
that's not
bad
what I
as
said.
teaching that the Bible is true. You said we should say there's no record to Moses, there's no this, there's no that.
That's not my version, dude. That's
Wait,
called
wait,
the,
wait,
the
wait, wait, Hunter,
historical
right,
facts of the
Hunter?
matter right now.
Just let's go point by point. So Rob, say that point. We'll have Hunter respond and just back and forth on that because I'm actually
Sure, he
interested in
responded.
this.
If he has more to say, that's fine.
Okay,
but
sorry.
he responded.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the first. The second, like, we have to look at the context of what these things are being taught. Even Mythic gives the game away here, which is the idea that parents shouldn't have a say in what's being taught. These are public education areas that public tax dollars are going to, and you're damn right that parents should have control over the education. This sort of appeal to the authorities because they have teaching degrees or something like that is incredibly ridiculous. Look at what's happened during COVID. There's a reason that so many teachers unions are against education transparency and bills for transparency, and that's because people saw during COVID when their kids were being taught at home how disgusting, how authoritarian, and how indoctrinating much of the education was that was coming from these people through all sorts of things, CRT and other sorts of things. We also saw that these teachers unions that are supposedly the experts don't give a shit about students whatsoever, which is why they went against all established science and recommended, to the chagrin of many Americans and people around the first world, that we lock down schools, even though every other first world country didn't do that. Lastly, to answer Maddie's request, I'll read this quote from ABC News, an article. 2 books. Gender Queer, an illustrated memoir, contains explicit illustrations of oral sex and masturbation. The novel Lawn Boy contains graphic descriptions of sex between men and children. Both books were previous winners of the American Library Association's Alex Awards, which each year recognize 10 books written for adults that have special appeal to young adults aged 12 through 18. This was in all Fairfax County school systems and in libraries across the country, in school libraries across the country.
Can you
There's 2
link
examples.
that?
Can I respond now to what Rob said? So
Sure.
I'm not saying
But
that
yes,
my
also link that.
version. I'm not saying that my version of anything be taught. I'm saying that if we're going to teach it as a historical religion or as a historical artifact, then we should also teach the facts of the matter in regards to history. And historically, there is not any evidence that many of these stories told in the Bible are true. Most of them are based on ancient Greek myths. Like, for example, the Epic of Gilgamesh came out hundreds of years before the book of Genesis was even written, which had almost an identical story to the story of Moses. These are things that are all pertinent to the historical nature of the Bible. So I'm not saying teach it my way. I'm saying teach the actual history of the matter.
But Hunter, when we teach,
I put it in the general
these
debate.
religions,
Mythic, I put it in the debate hashtag group in the Discord there.
Okay.
when we teach these religions, like in school, and we use these documents to like teach the religions, we're not like using these documents to teach like how history played out. It's more so, I feel like, teach using like reference to the documents maybe to teach like the history of the culture in different areas of the world rather than like
Makes
how
sense, yeah.
history unfolded, right? We
If
can
you're
use
like, hey, here's
actual
what some
historical
people
documents to teach
believe, this
history.
is what.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah, so like you
Mythic-
don't have to
hold on.
discredit the Bible. Like I would say that it would be equally wrong to like just go off on a tangent like in instruction and discredit the Quran or the Torah, right? Like I think that would be equally wrong, or to try to discredit like Hinduism or Buddhism or whatever. You can just use those things to like teach the history of the culture, which is how I was taught in like global studies. I wasn't taught like
Yeah.
If you're
this is
yeah, if
how
you're
history
simply
unfolded
teaching it,
because
then
this is how the
that's-
Bible says it. I was
Yeah.
taught like, oh, there's this group of people. They're called Jews. They practice Judaism. They have the Torah and they worship this God. Blah blah blah. Blah. You know, whatever. And like same
Yeah,
thing with
but I
like
think
Islam.
Mythic made a good
And the
point
Bible kind
earlier.
of discredits itself also, so it doesn't really
Mythic
need to
Sure, but
kind
you
of
don't
made a
have to
good
get into
point.
it, give instructions.
Mythic
Jeb,
kind of made a good point
then
earlier
we
where
have to
I
go to
don't
Maddie.
know that. Oh, sorry.
No, I said Jeb, and then we got to go to Maddie because you're commenting on
Okay.
this point. And then all right.
Mythic
I'm
made a
waiting.
good point earlier when he said that, and now that I think about it, when I'm thinking back to like, and I even was in like the AP World History where we were really deep into it. I don't think any specific passages from any of the religious texts were used in the history. So I think we should maybe recenter the conversation because the bill does specifically pertain to what's in the library, and maybe we shift the conversation more toward like what we include for kids to be able to grab at a public school library. Because now that I'm thinking about it, I agree with Mythic. I don't think I remember any specific passages from the Quran, the Bible, or the Torah being used when I was being educated about those religions.
Especially not in relation to world history. Yeah, they don't reference specific passages at all. They talk about the movements, adherence, and the way it influences society, culture, and everything else. And the issue is, by and large, CRT, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Acts, Common Core. It's the problem with what people are taking exception to things that buck tradition that are in the school libraries. That's specifically the problem, and it is a wedge culture war issue that is signaling to voters in that district that he's a safe bet for conservatives and traditional people.
Maddie.
To be clear,
Sorry, Maddie's
can I
been
just hit
waiting.
real quick?
5 seconds, literally 5.
How short is real quick?
See, with CRT, it's not just in the library; it's actually being used as instruction.
Maddie.
Okay, so yeah, I think it's interesting that we're talking about but they have like maybe we should only be able to teach it where you show both sides, whatever. There have been a lot of court cases, including a few Supreme Court cases, that reinforce that. So Hunter, you are right on the money. Like they specifically say that if used as part of instruction, they cannot, here's the quote, the purpose of the law said that you are not able to single out a particular religious belief and promote it as an alternative to accepted scientific theory or accepted theory about other things. So you can teach it in like a historical context, but there are certain parameters you have to adhere to. So like that's legal precedent. And I think the other thing, and maybe I'm the only person who feels this way, but like when it comes to parents having control over like what their kids learn, I don't think that parents should necessarily have that much say, especially because I don't expect every parent to be a literal expert in the best like educational techniques for early childhood development. And there are already exemptions you can take based on religion. So there you can exempt your kid out of certain instructions if in some way it goes against your religions. There's plenty of that. I went to school with some Mormons, and when we did our sex education, they left, and that was how it was.
That would require like
I just don't think that if parents were able to like just as long as they band together and blamed any book they wanted to, no, it's a dangerous precedent. And if you say, well, don't they know best for their child's education? Well, are they an education expert? Do they study this like regularly? Do they know? No.
It's not about do they know
but
best.
they obviously
have the
a
right.
say at the
Maddie
local
was
level.
addressing me here, so if I could just really quickly say, I think that what we need to be careful not to get mixed up with is all parents should be allowed to voice their concerns to the school. That's absolutely true. Parents, if they have an issue with something being taught, they should have the ability to voice that to the school. But whether or not they are able to dictate what their child learns, I think is a different thing. So for example, if you have like a caveman parent who thinks that sex and gender aren't different and they think that that's like lefty indoctrination or whatever, they obviously shouldn't have the right to deprive their child of scientific knowledge, which in all fairness is a bit of a risk considering the fact that we have not one, not two, but 5 different studies which all indicate that religiosity is strongly correlated with a lower degree of scientific literacy and a lower degree of scientific trust altogether. So there are definitely some risks there. Obviously, yeah, parents shouldn't have the right to just like dictate every single thing their kid is learning, specifically if they're trying to deprive their kid of something that is actual like accepted scientific fact. But they should have the right, of course, to voice their concerns.
That's what this bill does, though. It goes to a hearing with the exact board that dictated for that content to be in the curriculum in the first place or be in the library in the first place. It's not like it's putting it up to a vote to a bunch of caveman parents. It's allowing them to petition for a hearing from the very school board that put that book in the library to then give them a chance to rescind it after they have heard the arguments of the parents. This bill doesn't just say, oh, we do a fucking hand roll call vote in the courtroom and then the book is gone if it's gone. It's like, they're
we
in
entrust. Yeah, this is
So
why
I
we
don't think
entrust
the bill
local
is
school
bad.
boards
You should always
to
be
this.
able to address your grievances.
I want to throw it over to Half Baked Takes. He's been on the list for a while. We have Half Baked, Gappy, Cam, Jeb, and Mythic on the list.
Yeah, Maddie, we put so much value in like local school boards because we entrust them to be experts in this, and typically they are held to a standard by parents because, again, you may not put a lot of value in that, but most people will, that parents should be instilling some moral values and And I know you're probably saying like you're not agreeing with this, but
I'm just
depends how you're
I'm just
reaching this.
requiring most people. And yeah, I mean, there's a massive difference. And I think, Hunter, thank you for making that distinction, which is anyone has the right to voice their concerns, voice their opinion. But when it comes to those voices being almost immediately actionable to actively ban certain things, that to
that's
me
what we're
just
saying it's
doesn't
not.
right. I'm
not immediately
agreeing.
it's not,
And I'm
but it's
saying
not
that part of
disambiguate.
I'm saying that part of like when you mentioned school boards, you're absolutely right. That is a proper forum for parents to make certain concerns known. But when it gets as granular and specific as looking for individual books they want to ban, it just gets problematic. And it's also something that like I don't think every parent necessarily is an expert on, and I think it's dangerous to give them that much control.
Obviously we don't
books.
want these parents coming and bitching about like whole groups of books. Like you have Rob down there talking about CRT. Like we're conflating like the Bible being in school, which is like explicitly something that's like explicitly laid out in the Constitution. We're going to have a separation of church and state versus like an age appropriate book or something that they feel is like they should their kid shouldn't be learning, like Robin DiAngelo or Ibram X Kendi or whatever CRT people they point to. It just that's a fundamental disconnect we have here.
It would
Yeah, I
depend
think
too on
there's-
the actual literature that they are taking issue with. So of course I'm sure there are going to be some parents who object to if there is something that's being sexually explicit being taught to the kids. Of course, then that might be something that the parents don't want to be taught there. But you also run the risk again of parents wanting books, say, teaching about gay people removed because, they're a Christian and they think being gay is a sin, even though they have no actual basis for that. So you definitely do run some risks there. But again, I think that all parents should have their voices heard.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it over.
Yeah,
to,
I mean,
I want to throw it over to Gappy. You've just
sorry.
been waiting for a while. Jeb, you are after Cam Higby. And Robert, what's your name now?
I want to bring up something that Rob mentioned about some books that were nominated for like young adult awards, and they won these young adult awards, and they talked about very graphic things like related to like sex or like related to lots of different issues. Young adults, like people who are in high school and shit, are dealing with a lot of issues, and they should be exposed to some of the issues that they're going to deal with in the real world. They're not 5 years old, right? They're not giving a lawn boy out to 5-year-old children, expecting them to read this 300 page book or anything like that. I think especially when we're talking about high schools, the idea of trying to censor books just because of worry they might be too sensitive of a topic is probably not where we want to do it. Especially like, and as you've brought up, like you feel that people are worried about in college they're not able to speak about certain topics or voices or issues, right? This is an opportunity by having these types of frankly controversial books to try and facilitate that discourse in a high school. I think Lawn Boy, which you brought up, has like a whole section where like there's a guy who talks about how he hates illegal immigrants and how he hates gay people and stuff like that. That's in the same exact book that you mentioned earlier.
Well,
has
Christians
some other
would
like
love that
graphic
part.
imagery. So I think it's totally fine to expose high schoolers to that type of controversial issues. I don't think we should be afraid because it might not be age sensitive in that regard, because we kind of forget that though we're nominated for awards for young adults, not for 5-year-olds.
Right, that's
And,
definitely
just real quick, if I
Hot
could
take,
just respond to
Hunter.
this quickly.
Christians hate immigrants. That's a hot take, Hunter.
If I could respond to this real quick to Gappy. For example, there's articles that talk about that there were parents in Texas that said it was in their 4th grader's school library, the book Line Boy. So it's not just exclusively, and it won an award for education for young readers 12 through 17. A 17-year-old is vastly different than a 12-year-old, and parents absolutely have the right. Look, Maddie's giving the game away, right? Like she's trying to walk it back a little, but the reality, and I hope Democrats run on this. The reality is they don't think you as a parent should have the right to be able to control the education for your child. Go ahead and run on that. We've seen what the experts are about. We've seen how terrible they are. And I don't want to derail when I get my chance to speak. I have a question for Hunter pertaining to this, but
was that specific instance like a K-12 school? Because there are some schools that have kindergartners all the way to 12th graders and they all share the same library.
I didn't. The article I read honestly didn't say that. I don't know.
Yeah, because I think that would be important, right? Because then they might have a lot of like 12th grade or 11th grade books.
Well,
That'd
won an award
be kind of
for
weird, but it was K-12. That makes sense.
If it's accessible by fourth graders, then maybe that particular library, if it services kindergartners through 12th graders, shouldn't have that book there.
That we shouldn't have, if it's a kindergartner through 12th grade school, which does exist, like they just shouldn't have any books available.
That doesn't matter because he said
They
the
shouldn't
like,
have books
12
that
through
have graphic
17 readers,
depictions
correct?
of oral and anal sex.
Well, there are lots of books that are like for 9th and 10th graders and onwards that I don't think a kindergartner should be able to handle. I don't think a kindergartner should be able to check out Paradise Lost. Does that mean we should ban Paradise Lost from a K to 12 school?
I mean, they can
Paradise
separate the
Lost-
libraries for the
I
different.
feel
Yeah,
like
they
at
should-
that,
that's
at
what I
that
was
point
thinking.
we're
They
like
should
making it
separate the
extremely
libraries.
Easy
difficult.
fix, Rob.
Hold on, let me in here. Let me talk. So,
Yep, Cam, you are next. Then it got Cam, Jeb,
yeah,
Mythic,
so-
then Rob. Yep.
So, like, I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Rob. Earlier, you said that there was some books that were like pertaining to sex with minors.
Yes.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff, like I would completely understand why parents wouldn't want that in their student's library, like in general, regardless of age. And I think like I think in most cases, like people wanting books to be banned is usually pretty invalid, but there are obviously like circumstances where some specific books or specific types of books like shouldn't be accessible to people of that age group or people at least like in the educational setting, right? Now again, like I said, in most cases I think that these like claims to banning books would be like pretty invalid, but I think that there should be some like really like a system where parents like concerns are seriously like taken seriously, right? And I feel like at school boards a lot of times like they aren't taken seriously, and sometimes you've got crazies that come in and all of that, but like parents should be able to like get together and petition that something be changed and have the school board seriously consider it. And I think Hunter, you agree with that. I just, the only place I get concerned is that sometimes the school board doesn't take those things seriously and they just say, oh, well, we're ultimately in charge. We can just do whatever we want. And that creates a problem, but there's also obviously a problem with just letting parents vote on what they want, because you might live in a place where the majority of the parents are like essentially brainless, right? Like, I don't know. It's complicated. I don't have all the solutions, but
I think it's
You
just
could vote
that we're
those
kind
people
of
out of office, though.
Well, I think we're
right?
just getting at the fact that it's
Sure,
there's
yeah, but
definitely a
fix
nuanced
the system.
gray area as far as how much control do the parents have and how much control does the school have, right? So,
Yeah,
of course,
and-
if there's some kind of an offensive literature with depicting explicit sexual imagery being taught to fucking children, then that probably wouldn't be acceptable. And I, as a parent, if my child was going to a school where that was being taught, I might have an issue with that too. But then if you have a bunch of like inbred dipshits who are all like super Christian and think that gay people are bad because God, Sky Daddy says so, then like you run into again an issue there where they're going to try to restrict the truth from their children because they're, inbred dipshits. So I think that it's just, we're kind of getting at the fact that there's a gray area here, and it's hard to determine where that line is, but I think we kind of all acknowledge to the very least that there is absolutely a line.
So
Yeah,
we
so
got.
let me.
I'm sorry
I'm
for getting
getting on
hung up
that
on
real
this
quick.
point.
Hold on, no, hold on.
Okay,
I've got one
wait,
more thing on this
okay.
point.
We got 3 people on the list, but I'm gonna have Half Baked talk since he hasn't talked a lot this show. Then we have Jeb, Mythic, and Rob. And I saw Jeb wanted to talk really bad on this too. Gappy wants to talk again, so already I'm done. And Maddie.
No, you guys can keep the conversation going. My bad. I didn't have a specific point.
Oh, okay. Jeb.
Yeah, so we agree, right, that parents' concerns should be heard legitimately by the school board. The school board shouldn't just be able to dismiss them, but we also agree they shouldn't just be able to mob vote to get something banned in case they're in an area where they predominantly believe something stupid. So it feels to me like the thing that would cover that gray area is maybe a bill that simply formalizes the process of parents petitioning their school board and ensures that a formal hearing is had if there's enough support for a book being banned, which is the exact fucking bill we're talking about. So there is a gray area. We agree that the line is somewhat evasive and that maybe a case-by-case look would be better for this process. This bill does that exact thing. It allows parents to petition for a hearing that case-by-case decides where that line is, dependent on the historical relevancy or the appropriateness of the different age groups that have access to the book for a given book. We all are saying a bunch of things sort of around this topic that don't have anything to do with the bill, when the bill seems to be, similar to DeSantis' abortion bill, kind of an even-handed answer to both sides' concerns, whereas parents don't get mob rule to ban any book that they want, but they also get a formalized process in which they know that their voice is being heard by their school board. I don't see any problem here with this bill.
Okay. Rob, you are right after Mythic, so I'm just gonna have Mythic go first.
Okay, broadly speaking, I was going to save this for summary conversation or whatever, but basically, I don't know. I think we've sort of gone off the rails here with this, or we're all in a conclusion. I would like to say that this is probably good. I like direct democracy. This is some fucking ANCOM shit. Anything that facilitates participation with people who, by and large, have fucking backed out of electoralism and think interacting with the voting system is pulling a lever every 2 to 4 years. If this gets fucking fat corn syrup slugging parents off the fucking couch and into their school districts where they need to be to petition for either more funds or whatever, or actually interjects them into their child's life for once and actually reviewing what they're reading, whatever. I'm basically for that. I think it's good for the community. I think it's good for the parents. I think it's good for everybody. And again, the Bible should be read because it's based homosexual. It's homoerotic communism, basically, or the New Testament at least. And also, broadly speaking, just to Rob's point, those 2 books ended up being reinstated. The Fairfax School District returned those 2 books, Lawn Boy and Genderqueer, a memoir. Both were reinstated and added back to the library after review of which is similar to the review that would happen at a hearing like this. So I'm not necessarily against this. I just think that this comes at a time where above and beyond what is the sort of direct democracy that this might actually facilitate, that wasn't the intent of the bill, and the spirit of the bill was to foment wedge division and clip-jimped headlines and clickbait and everything else.
Okay.
Rob, you said you had a question for me. You want to ask?
Yeah, Rob,
Yeah,
you're
I
next.
will.
And then
So,
Gabby, then Maddie.
Sure.
So we're wrapping up.
So yeah, the fact that it was reinstated is probably a good thing that DeSantis is passing, that Florida's passing these other bills as well. I heard someone talk a bill, Don't Say Gay. I'm not aware of what that is. Parental rights bills, maybe what you're talking about. The question I have for Hunter is this. You continue to say things such as the scientific basis between the differences between sex and gender. I just have a 2-part question for you. The first is real simple. Did you support or go against the what's being termed here the Don't Say Gay, the parental rights bill? Did you support or oppose that?
I actually took a pretty middle of the road approach on there because I hadn't dug super deep into it. I do think calling it the Don't Say Gay thing is pretty hyperbolic, but I also think that there are certain implications with the bill that essentially require therapists or school board members to report things to their child, or report things their child tells them to the parents, unless they believe that the child might be abused if they tell them that. But I think that there's, again, some gray area there between what is going to be abusive versus what is something that might want to be told in private, in confidence, and not be necessarily told right off the bat to the parents. So I think that there's a lot more nuance there, but no, calling it the Don't Say Gay bill is actually pretty hyperbolic.
Okay, so for anyone who was against the bill, anyone on this panel, and if it's no one, that's fine. My question is, what conversation through 5 through 8-year-olds on gender identity or sexual orientation should we be having?
Which ones do you take exception to?
What
Well,
do
I'm
the
asking you.
experts in
I have a
early
question
child
for Rob.
development
Okay,
follow? What do they recommend?
Okay, Rob, can you ask that as your ending statement and people can answer that in their ending statements? Because I feel like this is going to spiral into a whole new thing and we still have a whole topic to do. So can you do that? Well, I'll do you first so people can answer your question.
If you
Yeah,
want, I
that's
can
fine.
just answer because I'm about to head out, actually.
Okay, you can answer now. And this can also be your closing.
Okay, yeah, I would just close with asking Rob. Rob, when you were 8 years old, did you know you were straight?
No, I didn't think I wasn't a sexual. I wasn't
Not sexual even, but when you were 8 years old, like, did you find like any kind of attraction to women or anything at all?
Did you know you were
not
a boy?
to my knowledge. I knew.
Did
I
you
was
know
a
that
boy.
you were? Did you know that you were a boy? That's a good question. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so obviously children have some kind of an understanding of gender identity, and gender identity is not a
No.
sexual
I knew I was a
thing.
boy because that's my sex. I don't play lefty games that tried to differentiate through some.
Right, and see, you're actually a
gender
perfect
content.
example of the caveman parent, because you don't believe the
No.
scientific consensus on this issue.
You're the
No, because you're an
that's
inbred
fair.
dipshit
That's
who's
fair.
far too scared to
I'm in-
actually trust any
That's right.
kind of
Before you
science
leave,
literature.
can I respond before you leave? I will take the label that you could erroneously call me an inbred dipshit, but I will take from your actions that you are a groomer dipshit. Which, given what you did with BX Bullet and attempting to have child pedophilia of her daughter, I'm not surprised that you would take this
Wait,
pro.
I had
groomer
nothing
stance
to
there.
do with that. Holy shit!
Yeah,
Wait, what
you
is
were
this
helping
base-
the guy that was sending.
What is
I
this
saw the chat
baseless
logs. I saw the
accusation?
chat
Holy
logs.
shit.
Why didn't you bring on BX to
Literal
talk about it,
slander.
groomer?
Dude, I think that it's very
inbred
obvious
dipshit
to
was slanderous.
Rob
It's
Noor
okay,
that
groomer. It's okay.
he's apparently
It's
very
all right, groomer.
Rob,
We
have
got
us
you.
not
Hold on, wait. This is
Fine.
Rob. Let me wrap this up, okay? Rob.
Okay,
I
okay,
just
so
wanna-
wait,
hold on, no. I
wait,
get to respond to this.
pause a second. Okay, you need to pause a second. So on one hand, I'm like, great, I want to shut this down because this is completely off topic and I don't want to do this. But on the other hand, Rob just threw a pretty big accusation at Hunter, so I have to give him the right to respond since this is again in front of a bunch of people.
You're all making
Yeah,
Dylan
so-
want to leave politics even more, by the way.
That drama that is now like what, 10 months old now at this point, was somebody reached out to me and wanted to come onto the stream. I didn't know the full details, and upon finding out the full details, I refunded them the money and told them to get the fuck out of here and then blocked them from all of my platforms. So one, nice try lying, Rob, once again proving you're an inbred dipshit. Second of all, I have another question for you. I have another question for you in regards to the groomer thing. So I don't know why you keep calling me a groomer based on something that was completely false. So, do you think that it's grooming every time Disney depicts a straight couple kissing on TV?
No, the idea, what is grooming is thinking that we should have instruction to 8-year-olds, 5 through 8-year-olds on gender identity because people that are 5 or 8 understand the biological reality that they're a boy or a girl.
Wait,
and
what
I'm
is
not
what
surprised
is
that some
instruction
of
mean?
you would
sexuality
embrace those groomer mentality.
What does instruction
Seeing as
mean?
how you're willing to take money from a guy who was
I
showing
wasn't.
underage pictures of people.
Wait,
that
why are
were,
you lying right now? I wasn't willing to do that, bro.
Well,
Are you
So-
dumb?
we can do a whole
So you'll
debate
see
on
what
it.
happens
Go on
here.
the
Just
crucible
to
and
be
do it.
clear
What do you
really
think?
quickly. So what
Are
happened
your
was me and
headphones
Rob, me and Rob recently had a debate over vaccines, and apparently he's still malding and butthurt about it. So now he's actually resorting to unbased claims that are literally have been now disproven 5 months ago based on
They're not
DM
unbased.
screenshots. So
Yeah, this is
once again,
gross,
Rob,
Rob.
hold on. Can I just make it known that Rob, you are indicating once again that you are a dipshit retard essentially, and this is exactly
Oh,
why
there's a good
people-
part. There he is.
yeah,
There
and
he
this is exactly
yeah.
why people like you,
There you go.
shouldn't have
There you go,
complete
Hunter.
control over what their
Rob,
child is learning
There you
You
go.
because
making-
we are
you
actually
having
smart
this
enough to
like
recognize
accusations
that,
is
hey,
kinda
sex and
gross.
gender is different and we can look at this throughout society and how gender's changed. And again, because you're an inbred dipshit, you're too scared to actually follow the scientific
homophobic.
literature. And instead, you want to cling to your backwards, old, bigoted beliefs, which let me
racist.
guess is founded in the fact that you're a fucking Christian.
And I'm fine.
I'll just say this real quick. I didn't start coming at you in any sort of negative way like that until you called me an inbred dipshit. And I crushed you in that vaccine debate, so I'm not molding.
called
That's why
me a
you were unwilling
groomer.
to
What are
do
you
future
fucking
debates
talking
with me.
about?
Citation
Right
needed.
after you called me an inbred dipshit, you groomer. That's
Oh,
right.
well,
I
because
did.
you are
because
one.
You're a
Okay,
groomer.
well, no, that was
Correct,
just to make it clear. That was not an ad hom. That was just a statement of fact.
Sure.
If
So
you
you know my
keep it,
facts?
bitch.
Thanks for admitting it that you're an inbred dipshit. Fucking idiot. Oh my
that- is
god.
that
Oh
what I
my
did?
god!
Is that what I
Please,
did, Bro?
please, can we just
Got
can we just wrap
wow.
this up, please?
Holy shit.
I have one thing to say on the topic.
Yeah, we have 2 people left on the list. Gappy and Maddie. Hunter, you're free to leave.
Yeah,
Okay.
if I could just really
Later,
quick
Hunter.
say one more thing. I'm very sorry that I kind of broke the rules. Next time I'll go a little easier on Rob. Clearly, that was very ableist. I'm sorry, Rob. Have a good one, Dylan.
Have a good one.
Later.
Gappy.
Okay, so to get back to the issue of Lawn Boy, because I know you brought up that some 4th grader found this book in their library, which is pretty shocking. What actually happened was, and I'm quoting, she goes to the school board and says, "This is my son Cameron. He attends Leander High School, and I'm going to explain to you the book that he received." The book featured a 4th grader as a character, but this was about a high schooler getting a young adult book that was nominated for an awarded for this young adult book in a high school
Maybe I-
library. And it's really
Maybe I
frustrating
misread-
when it's really frustrating when we say things and we hear these terrible stories about, oh shit, there's this 3rd grader who's getting this book about sex. That's absolutely insane, right? But when we actually look into the information, it's just not true. To make it even worse, in case it wasn't bad enough, that book, Lawn Boy, at that school district is only available to juniors and seniors who are taking an English class. So it's only for 11th and 12th graders. That's generally in America around like 16 to 18, right? That makes perfect fucking sense then in that case when they're going that high on the age limit and they're not allowing 5-year-olds or 6-year-olds because they can't even attend the high school, but they're not even allowing 4th graders to actually go and rent out that book. It's really, really important when we hear these like really tragic stories online about look at what happened with this 3rd grader going on or look at what they're teaching these kids in school, that we actually see the full context going on, because otherwise we just say completely incorrect shit that sounds absolutely awful that just never even happened, right? That's what's caused a lot of this outrage over school, is a lot of these cases that are being taken completely out of context or frankly are just being made up because people just want to read only a headline.
So I did it. I'll take your word that I misread it, that it was about 4th graders having sex and not a 4th grader got it. The award that the book won was through 12th 12 through 18-year-olds. So to apply that this book was only designed for people that were 17 and 18. In addition, this was available in Loudoun County, which I believe it was available in all of their schools.
It was only available in the high school, and the high school
that was in
made a
Texas.
specific statement.
That was in Texas.
Junior and
that
senior
you were
high
sa-
school students.
That was in
And
Texas.
12-year-olds
the
are
case you're talking
in
about,
sixth
not
grade.
Fairfax County school system, where the book was originally pulled from, right? Correct?
It's been pulled in.
Except,
multiple
for
schools.
example, online inventory systems show the books were widely available throughout high school libraries and Fairfax County school system.
High school
Robinson
libraries.
Secondary serves 7th through 12th grade.
Their high school is 7th through 12th.
Yes, that's what the article I'm reading from ABC says.
I don't know. Maybe we'll look into
Nonetheless,
it. I think I made the point. I think I made the point though. I think I made the general point. It's just really fucking important that we read into these things because it can be really scary to hear. Oh, a 4th grader got this book in their library when, as you just mentioned, that school is from 7th to 12th grade. It's literally impossible for a 4th grader to get that book in their library when that 4th grader cannot physically attend that school. So even in that new article, it's impossible, right? I'm not mad at you or anything. It's just frustrating when we have people say incorrect shit and then everyone gets upset about it, even though it's not true. So even in that second instance you bring up, there's no way a 4th grader could have had that in their school.
Okay.
That's all I want to say.
so
to that.
wait-
I'm not talking about the order. I think that's all I
I'll
want to
just
say.
real quick. I'm upset that
About the
this book's being
misinformation.
offered at any of these schools, just like I would be upset if Penthouse was.
Well, I'm upset about the misinformation that you're bringing out, saying a 4th grader is having this book in their library. When in both
Misreading
instances,
something and
it's
admitting
not
to
there.
be correct. So I admitted that I misread something. I'm
Yeah,
sure
and
that it's happened with
I
you.
appreciate that, but we have to
And
make
then
sure we
you
do that in the
hedged
first
it.
place. We don't want to allow a situation where people are to just say completely random shit and then they just take it back afterwards and we're all okay with it.
Okay,
right?
okay.
It's not completely
Guys.
random. I mean,
Guys, we got to
Well,
wrap up the
made up.
topic. Can you guys just go back and forth for any statements, please? Okay. So we have Maddie left, so I'm gonna have Maddie do it. CTV has jumped in from the rafters. So now I do want to make a note that it is now 5 conservatives, 3 left wingers. So I
you
just
didn't hear about. Did you forget that I went communist?
oh, that's true.
Based.
CTV's a communist now. I forgot about that.
Based.
So
What
actually,
a fun
Let's-
art.
Because he's
Let's
Christian, he
go.
believes in communist Jesus. Apparently,
CTV's a communist.
Yeah.
Go.
Gappy's molding
Let's
because he
go.
doesn't understand good content. And so we're gonna now move on to Maddie to wrap up the talking. Then we're gonna go into ending statements.
Cool. This is really quick. So this is from forever ago because I feel like a lot has happened since then. But it was a comment on the input parents should or should not have in their kids' education. So when parents send their kids to a public institution, so public school, what they are doing is they're entrusting the American education system to properly educate their kids. They don't get to micromanage every single bit of it when they're doing that. Should they want full control over what their kids are learning and be able to pick and choose and dictate it, then they can homeschool. That is something that is absolutely allowed. Or they can send their kid to a private school. But when you are sending your kid to a public school, you are also entrusting that there is a system built out to determine that they learn the right things at the right time, that they build their skill set so that they are in a better position to get good employment when they graduate or go on to college or whatever else. You are entrusting the system by doing that. You want to take more control, you can homeschool. That's my point.
Okay, we're gonna do ending statements now. We're going to start with Rob Noor in the bottom right-hand corner.
Yeah, that system exists. The public school is funded by public taxpayers, and therefore public taxpayers should have a say in what's being taught in these public schools. That's exactly what the parental rights bill in Florida was about. Parents should have more decisions, not less. And if these parents decide that they don't want gender identity, for example, or sexual orientation being taught in K through 3rd grade, they have the absolute right to say that. And so people like you just have to accept that because these are public schools. And if you don't like it, then send your kid to a private school. Additionally, this bill was massively popular, not just with Republicans and independents, but even over 50% of Democrats that read the bill supported it because it does 2 fundamental things. The most important thing is it gives parents more control over their child's education. Again, no one really responded. We saw what the head teachers union was doing, what they thought of education with children when they had lockdowns, when all science said that that was a disaster to lock these kids down. It caused irreparable harm to many children's psychology, emotional, and educational levels that we'll be struggling for years to get back on track with. And so we see that these, just because they have degrees, doesn't mean that they they are the end all be all. There should be transparency. It should be about parents. The second thing it did was stop the sexualization of our children. There is a movement to sexualize our children. There is a movement to indoctrinate our children with all sorts of left-wing causes and all sort of shit like SEL and CRT and this sort of gender queer ideology as young as kindergarten. And the gnashing of the teeth that you see from the left on this and on other things like the potential of Elon Musk having a neutral platform shows that they have to rely on censorship and control of institutions as opposed on individuality and parents having control of their children, because they know that their ideas cannot stand on their own. And that's why they have to rely on this sort of censorship and appeals to authority, because they don't want you as an individual or as a parent to make these decisions for yourself or for your children.
Mythic.
Yeah, I disagree with Maddie. I think that we should eliminate all private schools except maybe colleges. We should force everybody through. We should go in, kick in people's doors, get the jackbooted thugs in there, force them into the education centers, and teach them how to fucking read, so they don't make the mistakes, the argumentative mistakes that Rob made earlier, where he was citing things that he didn't read. Although, as I saying that, I realized I did that with that study. Okay, so basically speaking, this bill is a fucking non-issue. This is another contentious wedge issue, and once again, it's by and large about the type of inputs that parents should have and the type of things that they're trying to normalize, what he calls indoctrination, but what I would call inclusive rhetoric and general non-transphobia and just normalization of things other than boy, girl, married, get a job and die. I think there's a vast human experience, and I think it's incumbent upon schools to teach people how to relate in the world as it exists and not extrapolating how they think it should be based on a Bible source.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Maddie.
Yep. So, ban books in general, I don't love when parents have that much sway over it, especially when the primary motivator behind banning certain books is because it runs counter to their own personal ideology. That's why you just saw Rob do what he does so well and use his closing statement to pivot back to CRT, because somehow this entire topic is about that. It's like that thing where if you follow that North Star, you're always going to end up at CRT and queer theory, which is a thing, I guess, and indoctrination and the gay agenda, because those gays are getting uppity, aren't they? So yeah, parents should not have that much sway over what books are taught. That's what they do when they're sending their kids to public school. They are more than welcome to remove their kid from a class if what's being taught goes against their religious beliefs, and they're well within their rights to do that. But yeah, also, have you considered that a lot of parents are idiots?
There are teachers.
I'm going to throw it over to Jeb.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said before, I think generally every argument people have made has not actually been against the bill. I think we've all agreed that, parents shouldn't have the power to unilaterally ban books in their school districts, that the line is subtle and divisive, and that it's best handled on a case-by-case basis, but that parents' voices should be heard in a more tangible way so that parents feel more comfortable with their school system. And I think this bill has obviously solved all those problems. It puts it up to a hearing process that is still run by the school board. No parent has this insane disproportionate, even in a large group, even if you got like 50% of parents together, or 51, you wouldn't just be able to vote and get a book banned. It's just a formalized petitioning process for parents to feel that they have more input in their child's education. And I want to push back on that idea that parents are just entrusting the government when they send their kid to a public school. Like, yes, on one hand they are, because it's a government-run school, but I mean, we're in America, and the government is supposed to represent the electorate in whatever capacity it's operating under. So in the context of education, it would be operating according to the will of the majority of the parents in the United States. So, and in the local aspect, it would be the parents in that school district. So I think a formalized petition process is awesome. I don't think anybody has made an actual argument against it, and that's what the bill says. So I think we all agree the bill's pretty solid.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Half-Baked Takes.
Yeah, the bill may have some small issues, but overall, I don't see a problem with parents having another avenue for them to kind of have a say in their child's education. But at the end of the day, parents don't have the ability to micromanage their kids' education unless they homeschool them. We leave that up to a group of elected officials, or at least typically leave that up to a group of elected officials that we entrust them to do that. So, but at the end of the day, banning books is typically a bad idea. So I would hope that this isn't being used all that often.
Okay. I'm now going to throw it over to Gappy.
I think we're all in agreement here that generally we should try to avoid from banning books. And I think one concern that I guess was brought up generally is that a lot of the books that we hear that people are concerned about, when we actually look and, peel the layers of the onion, for lack of a better word, we find out that they're usually maybe for young adults or high schoolers when they're growing in a period where they really need to learn how to tackle these controversial issues, especially when, as many right-wingers on this panel have brought up, the issues of people not feeling comfortable to talk about certain topics or give their certain stances. We want to encourage that environment, and that forces us to make people who are about to become adults, who are about to become 18, to deal with challenging topics, to deal with issues like Paradise Lost, talking about how about misogyny and about how they hate women, to deal with books like Blonde Boy that might talk about uncomfortable topics relating to sex, right? One thing that Rob Noor brought up, which was really interesting, was that the idea of an agenda, that some people can have an agenda. I think that can apply both ways. Other people might have an agenda to pass these types of bills and to make it seem like there's a culture war, or that, we have to vote one way or the other in order to protect our children. For example, and I understand that Rob apologized for it, he didn't know, but the fact that he didn't know about the fact that that fourth grader who had this book didn't even exist, right? That it was completely out of context, and what really happened was that a high schooler's parent was concerned about this book being in a high school talking about controversial issues. That's really frustrating, right? We shouldn't have to be in a situation where we're spending more time figuring out what actually happened at a school than whether or not our school should be teaching X or Y. That's really frustrating because we're basically being taken hostage by people who have an agenda, right? Who have an agenda to say, oh, well, these teachers are ruining our schools, so we have to ban X, Y, or Z. So I think it's really important that when we engage in any of these topics, just like with the student debt topic, that we really try and make sure that we do our research here rather than citing issues that just never really occurred, because otherwise we're basically creating non-issues and trying to cultivate our own war and pit people against each other for no good reason.
Okay, I'm going to throw this over to, he wasn't here, but I'm pretty sure he probably has the best take on it. CTV, the Hippy Dippy champion.
All right, so this is what we're going to see from CTV, okay? As the leading proletariat, I feel like it's my duty to make sure that everyone else is getting their fair share of the workload, right? So I came in here to get us heading in the right direction. Y'all need to start pushing us there, okay? Because that's how this philosophy works. Y'all start pushing. I'm at the head of the cart. We're getting where we're going, okay? So Mythic, Maddie, Gappy, get to fucking work, because the champion's sitting up here on the throne, and we got somewhere to go, okay?
Well, now we're...
Am I supposed to be scared?
Gappy, he's a communist
think
now.
he
He's
brought up
going to
some
put
really
you in the
good points.
gulag. You better be careful, okay?
I think he brought up some really
Gappy,
good points.
just real quick, man, I put a link in the debate thing. It actually was the NEISD, which is the Northeast School Board Association Libraries, actually did pull Lawn Boy from one elementary school library in Texas.
Okay. We're going to throw it over to Cam Higbee.
Yeah, so I think I made my stance pretty clear. I don't think the Bible should be banned from schools. I think that it should be pretty rare when books are actually banned. But I do think that parents, due to the fact that schools are completely taxpayer funded and you're required to send your children to school, whether it be private, home, or public, that they should have some sort of say in what their children are actually being taught. And Maddie, I thought it was hilarious that you kind of pushed back on this by saying, oh, well, you can just homeschool or send your kids to private school. But in the last topic, you were actually complaining that colleges need to be more, you were incorrectly complaining that colleges need to be more accessible to the poor. But now you're saying that parents likely working 8 to 5 jobs should have to stay home and homeschool their children or work up the money to send their children to private school. It doesn't make any sense. Obviously, parents should have some kind of say in what their children are actually being taught due to the nature of the facility, right? Being funded by taxpayer dollars and all of that good stuff. I think the issue is really just where do we, how far do we allow the parents to go and how should we go about letting them have a say?
I'm going to throw this now over to the next topic. But before doing that, I do want to say that going into the future, for the sake of, I think I might add a new rule, and I'm not going to call out anyone specifically, okay? Because I think the new rule might be that if it's off the roundtable and it's not related, we don't bring it into the conversation because it could really derail. And I don't want like allegations that people have to like go back and forth to then prove, because then I get like you guys get like, let's say that I accuse Mythic Politics of stabbing Maddie's cat, right?
I did
Now-
that. I admit
okay.
it.
You won't accuse him of having a good haircut. That's for
In a
sure.
video game.
I didn't fucking.
How fucking dare you? So you're saying don't impose legally actionable slander into the Hippy Dippy roundtable?
I'm saying that that if you make an accusation like that, I can't just say, "Hey guys, get back on topic," because now an accusation's out there, and now it wouldn't be fair for me to do that, right?
Sure.
Rob, I'm asking your genuine opinion. What do you think of that?
It's fair. If it's your panel, it's your rules.
Not gonna
if-
name any names.
My general feeling is that I reciprocate. If someone wants to call me an inbred R word, then I'll respond in kind with equally hostile comments.
Okay.
You have a problem with
Wonderful.
R word?
So I guess next time, just call them
Dylan does.
a liberal elitist, mentally insufficient, whatever, right? Instead, can we like
R
just,
word? Can I throw that one out
Like,
with
in
it?
I
addition
know
to when you do
that
for
word is
opening
supposed to be
I know you're
banned.
not.
It's supposed to be banned,
I
but
know.
yeah, fuck. Anyway,
Yeah,
just-
I'll adhere to your rules. Right.
I appreciate
So
it.
that's fair.
I appreciate it.
Appeal to authority.
Appeal.
No,
Yeah.
it's being polite. It's being polite. Like, for example, not talking to your audience while other people are talking.
You're just saying that because you
normal
don't
shit
have
that
an
you-
audience. You're just saying that because you don't have an audience. If you did, you
That's
might talk
fine
to them.
too. I do have an audience. You're fundamentally wrong.
Okay, so let's
Again,
keep,
say something worth
let's-
listening to.
let's
I would
move on
say
to the guys. Let's move on to the next topic, please. Do you guys want to stay up for another hour on this show?
Absolutely.
I'm
Absolutely.
on the West
I
Coast,
forgot.
baby.
I'm
Let's
excited to
go.
be
I forgot
here.
about
It's
that.
fucking
I'm in-
time.
7:51.
It is 5 a.m. in Poland, to be clear, everybody.
Oh, fuck.
Okay.
Well, you made that decision. I applaud you for it. Right? Quit crying about
Oh,
it. You
that's
gotta show
right.
right.
You're a communist now, so you support the Russian invasion.
7:51 p.m. over
Okay.
here. I'm ready to go for 2
Well, you know, one
rounds.
thing to consider is that in Poland it might be in 5 a.m., but in other countries where it's a different time zone, you might want to use that time zone by getting Surfshark VPN. If you type !VPN in chat, in Dylan's chat, you'll be able to get a huge discount of 83% off on
Nah,
Surfshark
they no
VPN.
longer sponsor
Support
the
the stream.
channel.
Yeah, use code Destiny.
VPNs, yeah. Okay.
Oh, then
They,
fuck
they-
'em.
but maybe they sponsor Dappies. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they.
We're just trying to
sponsor
fuck off.
tell somebody out there. Share
Okay.
CBD. Type in code Danabo. Okay.
True. Okay, we're gonna throw it. If you want to support the channel, just donate sub. We have a Patreon. I'm gonna throw it over to Cam. Wait, not throw it over to Cam Higby. I just had CTV talking, and immediately I went into just moving on. Okay, last topic of the night. Recently, Kevin McCarthy. Okay, House Minority Leader. Okay, possibly Majority Leader in 2022. If the Republicans take back the House, there was some audio that leaked and some text messages, but you can talk about that too. Of him saying not friendly things about people like Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others who said certain things about the 2020 election and the idea that it was stolen, it was rigged, and basically he said that in a way that they could have facilitated violence on that day, and he would hate for the Republican Party to look like they caused what happened on that day. And there was a bunch of other things said in the audio. I assume many of you listened to the audio, researched this, because I was very specific about the audio. If you did the text as well, it's even better. So my question to all of you is, what do you guys think of Kevin McCarthy's private comments, which he's now getting so much heat for within the Republican Party? I'm going to throw it over first to Cam Higby.
Yeah, so like I don't really care about Kevin McCarthy's personal opinion on the matter. I obviously have my own opinion independent of Kevin McCarthy's. I understand like why he would like, I guess, be upset about all the election fraud stuff, the same as I was, and think that it might give the Republican Party a bad name, because obviously it did. However, I think that independent of Kevin McCarthy's personal opinion and like personal statements, we haven't actually learned any new information whatsoever from this. I know the stuff about Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene and all of those people. I think she was included, right? That audio hasn't actually been leaked yet, unless it was leaked after I watched the MSNBC report. I could be wrong on that, but I'm fairly sure it hasn't been leaked yet. I think the New York Times, if that's who first obtained it, is holding it for whenever they see fit to like release it or whatever. I'm also curious, like, I don't know like how they actually obtained this audio in the first place. I'm curious if somebody knows. Maybe Liz Cheney gave it to them. Perhaps, I'm not sure. Otherwise, I'd be kind of concerned as to how they actually got the audio. Anyway, I'll pass it on.
Okay, I'm going to throw it now over to CTV's chair. Wonderful. We're now going to throw it over to Gabby.
I think people are realizing now with this conversation that leaked, is that, believe it or not, a lot of people who are on the same political party don't agree with each other. Anyone who's worked on a political campaign can tell you that there are local candidates that they do or don't like. One infamous example is Joshua for Congress. There are a lot of people in Washington State who ran for Congress who really, really hated Joshua because he took a lot of other resources and he expected a lot of wacky things from his staff. Okay, but there's a lot of drama and there's a lot of gossip that comes with these types of political spheres, right, in real life. If you thought Twitch politics was wacky, wait until you see some of the stuff that comes up in the real world, right? In terms of how bad it is for Kevin McCarthy, it's pretty bad because the average voter doesn't understand that most, Congress people aren't all actually buddies with each other, right? They're really more like a coworker because that's how it basically is in real life. In terms of how much we should actually care, I don't think we should care too much, although it's really frustrating to see that happen where they're like, oh yeah, we really shouldn't be doing whatever Matt Gaetz is doing, talking about, people being traitors or, trying to threaten other people's lives by going on Newsmax and talking about how they're pieces of shit. And even though he'll say that in private, he won't say it in public. I get why he does that, because he wants to show off some sort of unity in the same way that Nancy Pelosi would want to show unity with like the progressive wing. But it's frustrating that occurs for sure.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Jeb.
Yeah, so initially, especially someone from California, I was frustrated with Kevin McCarthy a lot because he supported a lot of the neoliberal stuff. He seemed like he might be one of like the MAGA shills who just was going to die on that hill. This audio made me feel more represented by my California Republican, House Minority Leader than ever before, because I think it showed exactly what Gappy was saying, that the GOP is not this fucking MAGA zombie party that's just going to die with Trump. I think that was proven also in like the recent Virginia and Jersey elections. I think people like the Democrats have used that as a reason to undermine the Republican Party for a long time. But I think it shows that there are serious people trying to separate from Trump and the Republican Party. And I think that's a good evolution. I don't think he said anything that was wrong. I think Matt Gaetz's narratives, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, a lot of those people are bad for the party, optically and otherwise. They don't support good policy. They are narratively a fucking train wreck. We could easily put somebody in a few of those seats that would be way less fucking shitheady. And I think it showed that he was acting in his capacity as House Minority Leader and discussing different options as to where to go. And I know as conservatives, we don't like to point out that he said he might request that Donald Trump resign. He didn't end up talking to Donald Trump and asking him to resign. But I think as the House Minority Leader, who is meant to be the leader of the party in the House, I think that is a totally reasonable thing for him to have considered at the moment. I don't agree that what any of the representatives did legally qualifies like incitation of violence. I don't think it was this massive insurrection like rigged up by the GOP. But I think that as a House Minority Leader, it showed that he was willing to do his job, ask people questions, and consider all possible ways of moving forward and criticize the people who deserved criticism. I wish he would have done it publicly. I wish Matt Gaetz, MJT, and Lauren Boebert got more public criticism from within the party, but I'm glad they're at least getting it in private.
Okay, I'm going to now throw it over to Half-Baked.
So I literally work in an office right around the corner from Kevin McCarthy's, and their door was obviously shut that day. It seems like to the fervent, like radical MAGA base, this mattered a lot. But from what I understand, majority of Republican members didn't get a lot of blowback on this and didn't hear from their constituents saying like, oh, Kevin McCarthy is, a piece of shit, or that he shouldn't end up being House leader. So I think at the end of the day, it's not going to really matter for him. I think at the end of the day, for him, it's just a bump in the road.
Okay, I'm going to throw it now over to CTV.
My chair already made the best point of the night. I don't even need to talk.
Okay, fair enough. And nobody even responded to it either. I mean, it was fucking failing to respond to those great points. I'm gonna throw it over to Gappy. You've already gone, right? Yes, you've already gone. Okay, I'm gonna throw it over to Rob.
Yeah, so this is interesting. I get to yell at everyone on the panel then. Yeah, Kevin McCarthy is a rhino. He is someone, there is no difference between the establishment Republican and Democratic Party. They agree on all the big things, bailing out the banks, form regime change wars like going into Iraq, going into Libya, bombing Yemen. All of the top people agree with all this shit. There hasn't been representation for regular people on the left or the right in this country in 30 plus years. So I'm not surprised that Kevin McCarthy or Mitt Romney or all these other people, which I was saying for years were out to get Trump and would have rather had Hillary Clinton win, would have said that they wanted him to resign and talked about in his one text message. He says he thought that Twitter, he said, I believe his quote was allegedly, because I don't know that we have proof that these are the real text messages, but I assume they're true. He wondered why Twitter couldn't remove one of his Republican peers in the House, why he couldn't remove their comments. Twitter couldn't remove their comments. That's right, folks. You heard it. The Republican leader who may potentially be Speaker of the House suggesting Twitter censor even more conservatives, including elective conservatives. The idea that we have to accept that this was, quote, the most secure election ever is bullshit. The idea that after 4 years of the Democrats repeatedly saying that the election in 2016 was stolen, including a YouGov poll showing in 2018 that over 50% of Democrats literally believed that Russia tampered with votes to steal the election for Donald Trump, that all of a sudden now we have to say, oh, we can't have right-wingers questioning the results of the election. This is absurd. This sort of shit we now see with Biden's Ministry of Truth that he's pushing will be used to censor people that have legitimate criticisms with something like a war in Iraq that could come up in the future. It will be targeted against left-wing people, so you should be against this sort of shit as well. But at the end of the day, I'll be interested to see what people think exactly Bo Burt or MTG or Matt Gaetz said that was so fucking bad. What Matt Gaetz said that what prompted this speech from McCarthy, I believe, was that he said that it was a black police officer that murdered Ashley Babbitt. That's foundationally true. Or maybe that was the person he said he wanted removed, the congressperson that said that. So I believe that's what was said. Maybe Jeb there disagrees. I'm sure he'll tell us why Mitt Romney's the man, and we need to go back to the days of George Bush and things like that. Tired of these fucking rhinos. You're worse. At least some lefties that advocate for winning and power on their side actually believe that. I'm tired of these rhinos on the right that endorse this sort of corporatism, the establishment right wing that did everything they can to basically engage in a coup against Donald Trump. Get the fuck out of the way. You're a hindrance to us more than even the communist.
He would.
Okay, what? Mythic?
Jesus Christ. Yeah, I don't know what the fuck all that was. Anyways, look, this shows that what he's calling institutional or whatever conventional incumbent Republicans, they're middling party. This shows, like, look at all the weak tea bromidic, like basically cursory parliamentary type things where he looked in a very basic setting or a very basic setting. What was said by whom and when and how much exposure they had and were they actionable, whether they should remove them from committee, and how it would be relief if these people would just shut the fuck up and get off Twitter because they're doing actual harm. It's true. The future of the Republicans that Rob wants is what they're going to get, a fucking hyper low IQ populist one where they're going to cede any actual policy over to the Democrats, have them enact the neoliberal stuff, and then just enact right-wing wedge issues for 4 to 8 years again with the incumbent president. That's all we're going to see. The future is vitriolic populism. That's what we can look forward to. And also, I want to say that McCarthy is a fucking rat. You never fucking snitch on your people, never get recorded. That's fucking mafioso 101 shit. You would never catch Stalin with his pants down like that. Okay, Nixon got caught being recorded. Who else? Fucking McCarthy. What is up with Republicans and being bad at colluding? What the fuck are you doing? First of all, never get caught on tape. Second of all, what the fuck are you doing snitching on your homeboys? And third of all, it's good that you're getting roasted for being a weak tea fucking rhino. You need to fucking roll with your homeboys. Fuck MAGA, but at least fucking know which side your bread is buttered on. And that being said, who fucking cares, bro? None of this fucking matters. That's my take.
And Maddie to wrap up intros.
First of all, I just think I love, Rob, that like you can just get so riled up about things. And when they're like, hey, the potential majority leader might have known and like acknowledged that the violence was like because of Trump and that this was a bad thing. And you're like, yeah, that bitch was a snitch. She didn't go hard enough. I never liked her. Like, I just thank you for being you. And what I have to say about this is like, this is honestly, it's unsurprising, and it's no different than any other prominent Republican condemning Trump prior to his election, after his election, and then turning around and saying the exact opposite because they realize that they desperately need the approval of their base. So it's the same fucking thing. I mean, we had Lindsey Graham in 2015 who's saying there's one way to make America great again. Tell Donald Trump to go to hell. You have Ted Cruz accusing him of basically being like a sociopath and a compulsive liar, and then turning around later and being just lauding him with praise. It's because they are fucking leeches. They have no actual political ideology beyond just trying to maintain proximity to power and doing whatever they need to do in order to do that. And so, yeah, this is unsurprising. Of course, he said that about Trump because all actual Republican politicians know that like Trump's a fucking idiot, and they will only support him and be on his good side as long as it benefits them.
Okay, who wants to start us off?
I'll start us off. Whatchamacallit. So when it comes to like, oh, this is proving that the Republicans are the party that will like not support their people up like in private, or they'll not support them, then support them. The vice president for the current Democratic president said she believed that he was a sexual abuser. So I think that's the same for both parties. But no, to all of Rob's points, man, when he's talking, so what he was talking about with Matt Gaetz, first of all, was Matt Gaetz saying that you're a fake Republican if you don't support Trump's aggressive fight to overturn the election. He was saying that you're not a true Republican if you don't support him in this clearly losing battle to overturn the election that clearly was going to do nothing but lessen our chance to win elections later on. It's not rhino to not support the losing battle and to move on to winning issues. That's what politics is. It's the same thing the Democrats do. It's the same thing the Republicans do. Whether or not you believe the election was stolen, the investigations are done. Multiple investigations were done. They found no wrongdoing. Whatever problems you have with them, it's a lost issue. So when you are a Republican representative telling everyone that if they don't make their sole focus this losing issue and never talk about anything else that's actually affecting the American people's pockets and their lives, you are asking the Democrats to become in power, and that, I would argue, makes you the tool for the Democratic Party that Tucker Carlson accused Kevin McCarthy of being. Because if you are actively helping the Democrats get elected by trying to force Republicans to fight only on losing issues, then you are the tool for the Democrat Party that you're talking about. I think that we should focus on the liberty-focused Republicans like Massey and like Rand and the several others who are willing to just argue on constitutional conservatism and win rights on the local, state, and federal levels. You don't need to be hiding behind these fucking MJTs, Lauren Boeberts, and Matt Gaetzes that are only focused on culture war bullshit and saying we should only fight these stupid losing battles that don't help anybody, save money, make more money, get their kids into school and get a good education and whatnot. We don't need to be fighting these battles. We need to be focusing on what actually helps people so that we win elections like we did in Virginia. Yes.
Stop putting Trump above the party.
Trump is the party. What do you mean there's no party? This
No,
is a
this
reaction to
proves-
the populist core.
Shut the fuck up, Mythic.
This
Shut the fuck
proves
up,
he's
Mythic.
not.
That's not
What do you
true.
fucking- There's no
That's
fucking
not true.
party.
It's just not true.
literally everything's a referendum on the establishment and modernity. We're in the proto-fascist populist era of the Republican Party. That's all you guys have. Look forward to that.
I'm sorry.
When we separate
That is
public
not
and
true.
private-
Freedom Caucus.
Wait. I think one at a time makes more sense. So Gappy was next, but I doubt Gappy you're gonna respond to that specifically. So are you?
It's gonna be in relation to it. I mean, if you want to, if he name drops somebody, you can do it. But I was gonna talk about what he said.
Okay, we can do Gappy, and I assume both of you want to talk as well. So just write your names now. And Rob. Okay, 1 second. And I saw Cam.
So I think that an interesting thing that just happened there was that everybody was talking about how we ought to move the party, that everybody was extremely concerned over this call and over the future of this party, right? This actually happened, believe it or not, with the Democrats a few years ago. Abigail Spanberger, I'm sorry, I'm butchering her name, and a bunch of other Democratic politicians were on a call where they were talking about how, we have to watch about our rhetoric because we might not win our seats. There was one candidate who was crying because people in her district didn't even know how to pronounce her own name, and she she was about to lose to a Republican. What this means is that voting 100% fucking matters, okay? There's a lot of people who say everything doesn't matter, or, you know, voting is meaningless, it doesn't matter, they're just two sides of the same coin. The fact that in these private phone calls, we're hearing Democrats and Republicans literally scared shitless over the fact that, like, what they're doing might lose votes, or that we're splitting the party, or X and Y and Z is going on, means that this clearly fucking matters to them. Because if they get voted out, they just lost their fucking job. So at least the one thing to take away, both from Jeb's conversation and what all the other conservatives on this panel were talking about, what we saw with Abigail Spanberger and with the Democratic call 2 years ago, and what we see with this call right now, is that voting 100% matters. If you don't think Democrats are progressive enough, go fucking vote. If you think that we need to make sure that the Republican Party is not as MAGA cult driven, you need to go out and vote, okay? And before people
Go
fucking
preach, Gabby. Go preach.
before people complain and say, oh, it doesn't really matter or anything, Jessica Cisneros, a JD who was one of the most progressive platforms out there, she lost her race by 768 votes, okay? And those people in Texas, there's probably at least one progressive out there who could have helped make that different.
Okay.
But that doesn't change the fact that what's drawing the vote out for Trump is the vitriolic wedge issues and the proto-fascism and the populism. That's what's whipping the vote up.
Then why does his endorsement not matter, Mythic?
He won specifically on violating norms and tropes, which is exactly what McCarthy was caught with his pants down ruminating about. And it seems to me that he's behind the meta. He may be talking about parliamentary things that matter for the legislation, but as far as what's whipping up the votes, I think he sort of like lost
McCarthy
the
was
meta,
just being realistic.
or the rest of the country is in California.
McCarthy was being realistic. He was looking at the situation as it was, and he was spelling it out to the Republican leadership. I'm sorry that he was being truthful.
He literally said, "This looks bad. Are we exposed? Maybe we should get them off committees." Was the sum total of what they said. And maybe should Twitter ban them? That's the beginning and the end of what he said. So far as I saw, I listened to like 20 minutes of him talking. That was the 3 minutes.
I'm talking about the part where he was telling Trump to fucking resign. And
he didn't tell Trump to resign, to be fair.
Or that he would recommend resigning because he didn't ultimately. He thought he would. Yes.
No.
And he kept saying, like, we all know this guy. He's not going to do it. And a lot of the MAGA crowd took offense to this. But hold on. Your point was that MAGA is the party, and that's just not true.
It's not true, and it's the reason. Right now. No, it's the reason why the Democrats are going to keep losing fucking elections, dude. Glenn Youngkin wrote the fucking book on how to make sure that MAGA base still stays alive, but you're not fucking running on Stop the Steal anymore. The farther you
Trump
push
this far away,
the farther you push your narrative from Trump and on the actual issues people care about. Some people call them culture war issues, but I would argue education is not necessarily a culture war issue. Youngkin was able to win by separating himself from Trump. We have the same base we had when Obama was president, which was the base that just wanted taxes to get lowered.
That's not a national campaign.
Trump's endorsement doesn't carry any fucking weight for a reason.
Hold on, no. Both elections that happened in two separate states, they both went red. So we could argue that the overall pace at which the party was moving away from Trump matches the pace at which every fucking voting district in both of those elections moved red, because every single district in Virginia moved red as we started to move away from Donald Trump. We are growing as a party because we are separating ourselves from Trump. If you guys keep thinking that the Republican Party is just this fucking MAGA party, even after Kevin McCarthy proves it's not, and everybody internally had concerns just as they do externally, you're going to keep losing elections.
Who's the presumptive nominee?
Dude, DeSantis.
DeSantis right now is who the GOP wants as the GOP leadership and all the people that matter. That's who they want. They want Trump to stay the fucking Mar-a-Lago where he belongs.
Every Republican strategist wants Trump not to run and to go for DeSantis.
Okay, wait for a second. So Rob wants to go, but Cam has been waiting before Rob, so I want to make sure Cam gets to say something.
How about can we let Rob go, and then can I talk directly after Rob, because I'm just interested to see what he has to say.
Sure.
The initial thing I wanted to say was kind of in response to what Jeb and Rob were getting at anyway. So
that's fine.
Okay. So many things to say about this. I'll try to be brief, which I'm not good at. First off, if DeSantis, there's a lot of truth into what both Mythics and Jeb is saying here, right? Like the party is the party of Trump, but not Trump. Now, there are a lot of morons that place Trump above ideology. Trump goes back on his ideology many times. For example, Trump endorsed Mehmet Oz here in Pennsylvania. That's an establishment guy. There are many more MAGA candidates, such as Kathy Barnett and Carlos Sands, that are running, but he didn't endorse them. And you're starting to see Trump supporters wake up and say, oh, the movement was about more than the man. It's about an ideology. So that's absolutely true. However, the truth is that even with DeSantis, there's only two possibilities. Either he'll be seen as a potential outsider and he'll get the same treatment, and Jeb will be here going, good, I'm glad that Kevin McCarthy's against DeSantis as well. All of these rhinos will be doing that shit, which would be worthless. Or that DeSantis will just go along with the party line anyways, and he won't make any difference whatsoever. We'll be in the same position we've been in for 30 years, where a Republican comes in that's really going to do change, and then nothing changes. And then a Democrat comes in that's really going to change things, and then nothing changes. The reality is that the culture war issues are the big issues. Corruption.
Rob.
Corruption.
What do you
is
want to
the
change?
I am a populist conservative. The big thing that I want to change is corruption. We saw 4 years of a coup with the intel agencies, the mainstream media, academia, entertainment industry, every single institution in this country going against Trump. The coup portion of it was that they spied on the president of the United States using unverified opposition research that we're now finding out was actually started by the Hillary Clinton camp talking to a known Russian spy. We see that the mainstream media and tech groups did everything possible to censor and help, as the Time magazine article said, a shadowy cabal designed to fortify the election for Joe Biden. And people like Kevin McCarthy stood by. The things I want to say specific that I was criticizing, I don't mind if Kevin McCarthy criticized Matt Gaetz for calling people rhinos. That's not all he did, though, is it? First off, him saying things that we need to get on more important issues. Dude, this phone call was January 10th. In 2020. It's not like the phone call was yesterday, January 10th, 2020, and he was already saying this shit in an environment, by the way, where there were histrionics about exactly what happened in January 6th that led to the creation of one of the largest domestic terrorism task force, basically solely designed to go after Trump supporters, including those that were nonviolent. And where's Kevin McCarthy on that? Oh, nowhere. He also suggested that a fellow Republican House member be kicked off Twitter and was having conversations with Steve Scalise, where Scalise was questioning whether or not what Matt Gaetz said was literally illegal. That's the problem we have with Kevin McCarthy. He is who we thought he was, and he did tell Liz Cheney that he was considering telling Trump to resign. Trump did nothing to warrant being removed from office or being told to resign. If we have Republican leadership that witnesses how every major institution was against Trump and how we were being lied to about most secure elections ever, that's willing to say, I think this guy should resign, we should consider keeping other Republicans off Twitter, what fucking good are they to the party or anyone else?
Hey, Rob, why do you think the Freedom Caucus is only like 12% of the party? Why do you think this is like such a small... Why do you think that people like Paul Gosar, MGT, these people, they focus on the shit that you just went down a fucking a cavalcade of fucking nonsense about culture war bullshit, instead of focusing on any single one real fucking issue that anybody gives a single fuck about?
What's the
This is why I don't identify with the fucking Republican Party. You guys don't want to talk about real shit.
I can answer Mythic's question.
He asked me.
Yeah, Rob gets to respond, but then I do want to make sure Cam Hickey gets to talk. He did give this time to Rob. And I'm going to write down Jeb, Mythic, Gappy, and Maddie. And CTV's having a blast.
Can someone link the definition of coup in chat? Thanks.
And also, what substantive quality do Republicans want?
Wait, Mythic. I wrote your name down.
Okay.
Do I strike it off now because you got to say your thing?
No.
Okay. Wonderful.
Okay.
Rob.
So my answer would be this. In response to that, although it's not good form, the question would be, well, what exactly are these traditional Republican policies? For example, in my area in rural Pennsylvania, they traditionally vote Republican. Have these old school Republicans like Mitt Romney and Jeb Bush and George Bush, what have they done to help rural America? Just curious. They're fiscally conservative, and yet they have blowout budgets all the time. They're America first, yet they endorse all of these foreign wars. Right? They spent 6 years telling us, damn it, if you elect us, we'll get rid of Obamacare. And then they had the presidency, the House, and the Senate, and guess what they didn't do? Get rid of Obamacare. So I'm tired of, the big issue is corruption. That's why I would have even supported a potential outsider like Bernie Sanders over fucking Jeb Bush, over people, and that's where Trump was at his worst, when he said that he was bucking the establishment, but he was putting people like John fucking Bolton on
Hey,
his task
Rob,
force.
go
It's
to
outrageous.
congress.gov, type in agriculture, type in broadband, and then on the side you can click Republicans, and then you can sort it by the fucking Republicans that are doing real shit and talking about real shit instead of the coup that happened to Trump or some shit. I like it. Just
Well, hey,
you
hey,
want
hey,
to talk
hey,
about
are you the
nonsense.
only real
You want to
Republican,
talk
Rob?
about nothing. What'd you say, Maddie?
I'll just say this.
I asked Rob if
hope the
he's the
FBI
only non-rhino. Everyone else,
No.
like Mitt Romney, who is a
What did I
literal
say? That
like,
there are millions.
Republican
So sick of that
nominee,
fucking
they're
word, dude.
rhinos, but you're the
Rhino.
only
Okay,
real
wait,
Republican.
Everybody,
You guys
remember,
are
wait,
done.
everybody, a second. So, Rob, I know Rob can defend himself. I've seen him do it before, but I do want everybody to realize it's like 7v1, so or 6v1. CTV's jamming out.
Let Cam go.
I agree
Okay.
with Rob.
Okay.
I agree with him. They're gonna ignore people like him at their own peril. The wedge issues are driving the republicanism. That's what's driving it right now. Everything else is just fucking washed over neoliberalism.
Okay.
We're not
Cam?
ignoring them.
Yeah, so I guess I would kind of agree with Half Baked and Jeb in some areas and Rob in other areas, right? So I think that there are a lot of people, I mean, not even necessarily Republicans, just people on both sides that are promising like a shit ton of stuff and then doing the exact opposite of what their party wants. Like we know that like censorship online is like a huge issue and contention with Republicans. So why the fuck is Kevin McCarthy calling for his colleagues to be censored on Twitter? It doesn't like, that's obviously not like what we want. And like, I guess like if you're going to call him a rhino, like sure, like that would be fair. I hate that. I don't really like that term, but anyway, like also though, the problem is we're also electing people that essentially have nothing between their fucking ears, named Marjorie Taylor Greene and maybe like Lauren Boebert and a couple of other airheads. I think Matt Gaetz used to be pretty on point, but he's kind of shifted over to I guess simping for Marjorie Taylor Greene for some reason. But yeah, no, so there's a couple different problems. And I think you're both like outlining pretty good problems with the party, but you're just like for some reason disagreeing. And Rob wants to defend people like Marjorie Taylor Greene when really there's like, why would we even want people like that in our party in the first place when they're making us look like absolute garbage and idiots and they're not even really accomplishing anything that we want? Like, who the fuck cares about a culture war? There's obviously bigger issues that we have and that we want legislated.
Like what? Like more than culture issues, I would say, is corruption. So I'll say this to all of you. Right, you got your little, so we have agriculture bills, that's right. Now, the majority of Republicans, including Donald Trump, which I think was one of the worst things he did, supported the lockdowns. They did that, and they supported the big stimulus bills, and now we have record inflation. There's your Republicans for you. But hey, they had an agriculture bill that they wanted to spend money on as well. I'll just say this to those of you that are really concerned about the agriculture bill instead of corruption. I'll say this. I hope that the mainstream media and the FBI agrees with you, because if they don't, they'll just go after any candidate that they don't like and stymie them or protect them from being elected in the first place. Like, great, you guys like drinking.
So
that's
I feel like I got
Jeb is next on the list, so I want to make sure it's him.
So it
Jeb,
out.
Mythic, Gappy, Maddie, you're on the list.
So Rob, my issue is, right, I don't hate all the wedge issues, right? A lot of the wedge issues are important, but the stop the steal thing was specifically my thing, where if you're going to die on that hill, you're going to fucking lose elections, right? Like education, people consider that a culture war issue. I agree that there's certain, like the Florida bill, that was perfect. Make it more tangible, the input parents have on their kids' education. Same thing with like certain other wedge issues that are a little more ambiguous, like the tech censorship. Now, when I read the way I heard Kevin McCarthy sing, and again, historically I have not liked him, what I heard it as is sort of a fucking like Twitter's fucking banning everybody, but they won't ban these guys. When he was thinking that what they put might have actually been an incitation to violence, I wouldn't question him saying, well, wouldn't Twitter ban that if they think it's an incitation to, if they actually think it's an incitation to violence? But the issue is, you're talking about what are the real conservative policies? Well, I can tell you some. Reducing spending. You know what fucking Donald Trump never did once? Reduce spending.
That hasn't been a Republican issue for a long time.
The Second Amendment. You know who was fucking anti-Second Amendment is shit? Donald fucking Trump, dude. Yep. You can be a populist all you want, but every actual tangible Republican issue, Donald Trump was the fucking tool of the Democratic Party. Because if we really are accepting this MAGAification of the GOP, he is turning the GOP into a party that doesn't give a fuck about the Second Amendment or fiscal responsibility. We are just saying that dying on the MAGA hill, the only thing you gain by that is the bullshit fucking stop the steal issue that's a losing issue. If you move to a guy like DeSantis, who will attack the wedge issues in a more intelligent way through the policies he has, his abortion bill bill is one of the hardest to criticize out of any abortion bill that's been passed. The bill that we just discussed, that pretty much everybody ended up agreeing with, was one of the best middle ground bills as far as getting parents' voices heard in their school boards. Was great. Okay, but
really
whatchamacallit? But he is also willing to stand for the Second Amendment issues. He's also willing to stand for fiscal responsibility in most cases. We want guys like that who can hit both issues, not just fucking jerk himself off over the culture war issues, while not just ignoring the other issues, but actively working against them with bump stock bans, red flag laws, and record fucking spending up until his time.
Okay, so let me address this. I'll address this, right? The idea, like, I don't disagree with you. I actually think there was a lot of stuff that I criticized, and I do think one of the big problems was that some people followed Trump as a cult. It's not a person, it was an idea, right? But the reason I voted for Donald Trump would have been the same reason in 2016 that I potentially would have voted for Bernie over Jeb Bush, was the idea that a potential outsider would oust the corruption of all of these public institutions in a public way. That's exactly what the election of Donald Trump did. There is no doubt now to any objective person that almost the entirety of the mainstream media, academia, all of our institutions, the tech companies, etc., were in the bag going into 2020 trying to get Joe Biden elected. There is no doubt on that. That is the single biggest issue. Where Trump failed was he outed the corruption, not because he's playing 4D chess, just because he was a potential outsider, but he didn't do shit about it. He put those corrupt people right around him. But you're right, he wasn't the most conservative person. That was my big issue, the corruption, because until we solve that corruption, we've had Republicans over and over that talk about fiscal responsibility, and Mythic's absolutely right. When's that been an issue for them, right? I listened to Tea Party people tell me about fiscal responsibility, that all of a sudden when their guy got in office, when Donald Trump was in office, they're like, spend, baby, spend. It's bullshit. But Republicans in the Congress, they passed those bills. They weren't arguing for fiscal. Kevin McCarthy wasn't arguing for fiscal responsibility. The sole issue I have here is, I guarantee you, given that corruption is the big issue and it's evident how corrupt all of this shit was, the fact that you're saying, I'm glad Kevin McCarthy suggested kicking fellow Republicans off Twitter. I'm glad on January 10th, he thought that Stop the Steal was so bad that he was privately saying he was going to ask Trump to resign. It's fucking nonsense. And it's that same sort of attitude will allow this corruption in all of these institutions to continue. I agree with you that the way Trump talks about
hold on.
Rob, I don't think the reason that Kevin McCarthy was calling for Trump to resign was necessarily because, I mean, he did say that he's had it with this guy, but I think it was more because if I interpreted the calls correctly, McCarthy thought that Trump, and don't get me wrong, like, I'm not a fan of McCarthy, but it was because he thought that Trump was going to be impeached for a third time, and he thought that it would be successful, passed in the House and then possibly passed in the Senate as well. So, like, get him out before he's impeached, right?
So then he was wrong.
But we get back to this core issue.
How would we be helping corruption by mindlessly never questioning our fucking leader? Wouldn't Kevin McCarthy, considering all sides of the fucking subject, be better for anti-corruption? Because he doesn't give a fuck who's in power. He's willing to question it no matter what.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So, for example, it would be the same as if we look at the Democrat side, right? So if Kamala Harris, if we saw, she's questioning Joe Biden, that's good. Because in private, she's saying, I think we should get him to resign. And I think we should get him off of Twitter. We shouldn't allow him to post on Twitter. And I'm talking to another person that says that maybe it's illegal that he's talking on Twitter. Yes, absolutely. I don't mind politicians questioning other politicians in leadership. That's absolutely fine. What I have a fucking problem with, you're saying, so if he questioned, it's okay if he suggested Twitter kicking other Republicans off. It's okay he suggested that maybe he would have Trump resign.
Bro,
fuck
he didn't
that. That's the problem. He questioned exactly what he said.
He was calling fucking Sangar to get him to ban him. He said, isn't this against Twitch's TOS because it might be interpreted as an incitation to violence? And that would help.
Wait. Okay, multiple people yelling at the same time. Jeb, can you say the question again? Because nobody heard it. And then Rob can respond to that question. Then I want to get to the list because Mythic, Gappy, Maddie, these are all people that are waiting, and have like about 30 minutes left maximum.
Yeah, so the way Kevin McCarthy was talking about his tweets is he was saying, can't they take their Twitter accounts away too? Like, fucking their tweets are obviously damaging our party. If these are read as incitations of violence, they're already against the Twitter TOS anyway. So let's get these fuckers off Twitter so that they stop embarrassing our fucking party. Because if you want to beat the Democrats, you actually have to win fucking elections, and you can't look like an idiot because of 3 people in your party, which obviously guys like Mythic are proving. People think that those are the people of our party, and those are the issues that win our party. And it's wrong.
It's the same reason we dogpile.
He just invoked me.
Okay.
It's my turn, right?
I did.
Oh, wait,
gave
it
him a
is.
pass.
It is Mythic's turn, and he invoked him. So.
Yo, okay, first of all, when people are talking about these are the people that people think, these are the people that are literally go to our politics, go to Reddit, go to anything else. These are the people that are leading the talking points that your party fucking traffics in. These are literally the people doing that. All we know is charge they phone, eat hot chips, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, DeSantis, and fucking Gomer and others. That's the people who are setting the dialogue that they are going to literally campaign on nationally. So when you're talking about getting elected, these little congressional districts or whatever, that may be a different ballgame, and you might go and tell them fucking pork barrel infrastructure, this, that, the other. That may work for them, and you may lie to them about what you're going to deliver to them locally or whatever to get elected and avoid the other stuff. But to say that it isn't big, overwhelming culture war issues involving CRT, transphobia, homophobia, Medicare, abortion, that those aren't the wedge issues that literally every Republican is trafficking in to get elected. I don't know. I've not seen any Republican not touch those. I've not seen anybody not touch those. Literally, did we even examine how McCarthy his last campaign? I would guess it looks something similar to that, where he kicked the same cans down the road. And a lot of to-do is being made about these conversations that McCarthy had. That's literally a nothing burger. He was literally floating questions about maybe we can do this, maybe we can do that, or whatever, which is only funny because he walked it back and didn't do any of them. That's what's funny. The only person to raise this thing publicly walked it back and then just got applause yesterday for saying, yeah, I'm not going to do shit about that anyways. So what are we even talking about? If you're talking about this as an example of some establishment or a Republican setting the electorally proper etiquette, he's literally signal boosting all the same people that you're saying are bad.
No, he's not. I said stop the steal was a losing issue. Some of the culture war issues are issues that are important, and the other Republicans are following them. I'm saying when he was talking about Matt Gaetz and Lauren Boebert and fucking MJT, they were specifically talking about January 6th, stop the steal, and fucking retaking Trump's legitimate win in the presidency. Those are the issues that we are going to lose on. I don't give a... Yes, CRT is a winning issue in a lot of places because there is a concern that that's going to be put in the schools by certain parents. And that's why DeSantis crafts legislation that allows parents to feel more heard, but doesn't force the school districts to change anything because you can maintain
legislation that deal the same wedge issues, the same homophobia, transphobia, women's rights to govern their own bodies, the same wedge issues that we've been relitigating over and over again since the 60s, the 70s, broadly speaking. And they're going to be more hyperbolic and a more populist-friendly rhetoric. That's all they're going to do, and they're going to be effective in the midterms doing that.
Jeb,
I just want to say I just want to respond because I didn't get a chance to respond to what Jeb said there. You said that McCarthy did this because he thought that it potentially violated terms of service. What exactly did they say? There wasn't one call to violence. And you're saying, well, his motivation was that he thought it would hurt his party. I do not want a guy in leadership of any party that says, I'm going to pretend that something's a call to violence and want them censored because I think it hurts my party.
Yeah.
I just did an almost hour-long segment on it. I can tell you the exact thing just for clarification of what he said. If you want me,
Twitter
Rob.
has a whole
if not, I can stay out of it. Okay. He said specifically. I think it was Mo Brooks, and it was a statement about fighting, and specifically he said take down their names, like take them down, like write them or something. And he thought that was closer to something that should get somebody removed from Twitter than what Trump said. That was what he said.
The CNN article said it was Mo Brooks, but it was his comment about Ashley Babbitt, which I believe the comment that they're referring to there is he said the officer that shot an unarmed white Trump supporter was a black man.
It was multiple. It was like 3 or 4 quotes that he mentioned.
Okay, come on.
Jeb. I'm sorry, Barry Moore.
Gaetz speaking to them, saying specifically kick ass or something like that. Like they thought they were looking for a hallmark thing to use as a direct incitement of the other nebulous stop the steal stuff. They were looking for a direct incitement, and that's about as close as they got. It's a nothing burger. Who cares?
And real quick, and so just now that Dylan's clarified, I'll just say this. Like, one, it shows that they were willing to censor conservatives, which is a huge problem based on this nebulous shit that wasn't calls to violence. And second, it shows that people like Jeb support it. Jeb would support censoring conservatives that said these sort of things because he thinks that the motivation of making the party look bad is worth it. And that's why him and Kevin McCarthy are the exact same type of people that we should be rejecting again. I don't give a shit if you support these other issues with me or not. The fact that you want people censored because you think it hurts your party proves that you're not concerned with fighting corruption or free speech, which should be the tantamount issues.
So 15-second response. I can
Yeah,
make it very
he
quick.
incited you. Oh, wait,
Yeah.
wait. To clarify, Rob, were you talking about him or 2016 presidential candidate? Which one?
Oh, I was talking. Your name is Jeb, right? I'm getting that right. Yeah, I was
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about him.
Okay,
Yes,
wonderful.
yeah, me. So no, I didn't say I supported his line of inquiry at all. I was saying he wasn't just saying he was going to like lobby Twitter to get them banned for no reason. He was saying I think there's genuine reason why not only did they say something that could be considered an incitation to violence, but that could also hurt the fucking party. And if Twitter's just fucking banning everybody, why wouldn't they ban that? Because that would help us out a little bit.
Okay, I need to throw it over to Gabby because Gabby's been waiting the longest time. Gabby, Maddie, and Cam, I got you down.
Okay, I literally just wanted to bring up two things, like maybe I don't know, whenever half an hour ago. One, a bunch of people brought up the idea that like, oh well, the future of the party is DeSantis. I think the recent CPAC poll had Trump win by 59%. Had Trump won with 59% of the vote. Second was DeSantis with like 26% or something like that.
True.
It's not even close. The majority of the party wants Trump. Even when we're talking about like CPAC, we're talking about top Republican officials and probably some of the most diehard Republicans out there. If they're getting the majority of people onto Trump, then I think it's pretty clear that it's not a DeSantis party, it's a Trump party. The only other thing I wanted to bring up is I think Mythic at some point, I think Rob brought up like, oh, I'd rather vote for Bernie Sanders, and Mythic was like, yeah, that's base, that's cool or whatever. I don't think we should be supporting that type of Machiavellianism. I think ultimately progressives should really be trying to bridge the gap more with liberals and try to move liberals more further left rather than trying to celebrate. Okay, well then communists or far left people or whatever you want to say, we should be trying to bridge the gap between the far left and, more moderate individuals so that you can actually win the primaries before we talk about bridging Republicans. I don't think it's something that we should really fetishize that like, Republicans are willing to vote for us or populists or whatever.
I got you. Yes, populism. It's like tailism. It's a dangerous precedent that you're setting because you're just recruiting the worst members. But I was just saying, based that he liked Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. It's just that, I think we should be trying to focus on trying to win the people who are more likely, to support things like, trans people or trying to support LGBTQ plus rights, social issues. And trying to move them over rather than trying to focus on the horseshoe. Well,
that's why you're losing.
They're better at stoking the passions. The Republicans are better at getting elected 100%. They're better at that.
Let me be clear.
Mythic and me disagree. Fucking matters instead of being a non-electoralist.
Mythic and me disagree on like all of our ideology, but I think we agree on what's actually happening. And I think that I want you Democrats to run. Please keep running on. We need to teach 5-year-olds sexual orientation and gender. Please. But we don't want parents involved in it. Please keep running on that shit. Please. It will be landslide after landslide because even moderate Democrats cannot stomach that shit. So
the only reason that they're running, they're making the mistake of engaging on those talking points, and I agree that's a fucking loser because the Republicans win by saying okay groomer and Democrats respond with the fucking paragraph and the optics are terrible on it. I agree they should not be engaging on those as campaign talking points 100%.
Okay, I want to throw it over to Maddie. Maddie's been waiting, and then after we have Cam on the list as well.
Sure. I think something that I wanted to discuss regarding McCarthy that I think is a major point is that even though we now know that he was expressing things where he thought that like Trump was to blame, that it's definitely stoked violence, even going so far as to say, I might ask Helen that he needs to resign. Like the fact that he did all that and then went on to do everything he could to hamper the January 6th invasion and like actively tried to stop it from happening and stop them from getting all the necessary resources that they need in order to properly like go through it. That to me makes it even more fucked up because it shows he was well aware that this was dangerous, that it warrants investigation, and then turns around and does that, where he basically just acts as a blocker to keep the January 6th Commission from being able to get any tangible or helpful information. And it just shows that he's a fucking snake. And I have a question for Rob, because you're talking about a lot of these guys, a lot of prominent Republicans who are rhinos. They're disloyal, whatever. What Republicans fit your criteria for like one true Republican?
Well, it's not
or
about
are they all fucking snakes?
It's not a matter of one true Republican. It would be very similar to how a lot of Democrats would say a lot of Democrats aren't actually
which
liberal or
ones?
left wing. Please, I'll answer, right? So the people I'm talking about that specifically would meet this criteria of being rhinos would be people like Mitt Romney that recommended that someone like Tulsi
wasn't my
Gabbard committed
question.
treason. Your question, I'm going to say this. All of the ones that I can think of except the following. Is that okay? Is that a sufficient answer?
Oh, sorry, you're still talking? Yeah, it's fine. Keep going.
Maddie, you were clearly the dumbest person in the room. You asked me a question and then admit you're not fucking listening to my answer.
You haven't
You're not,
even answered my question.
The IQ
You've
drops
given
10
a
points every
preamble.
time you fucking talk.
We don't need
Please
the
just go back to
introduction.
talking to your
Just answer
audience.
the question.
He's trying
when
to
you
answer you.
it.
Let him
So
fucking
you
answer.
okay? What I'm going to do is bring up a list of every Republican in Congress and start listing hundreds of people. Okay, or I could list the ones that don't fit that criteria, which is like 5 or 6. Up to you. Which one do you prefer?
So you're gonna do the opposite. I was just asking.
No, okay, I'll do what you
fit
want.
your
Give me a second.
criteria
Dylan,
for
how
like
long
a
do we
good
have the show here?
Republican.
So how
we
long
got
do
like
can't
we have
name
like
like
20
one?
minutes left.
Okay,
Can you name
it'll take me
one?
about that to like, yeah, Rand Paul. There's one.
Even though he's
Good.
on record of saying that he was against Trump in 2017 and like was speaking at a conference, I have the quote if you want, but like even
Yeah, I
that
don't have a
person's
problem. I don't
conscious.
think.
You think he's
Right, I
still-
don't. Right, you good? Yes,
He's
I
gonna
don't
list
think
all the
people criticizing.
Pepegas. He's gonna list
don't-
the ultimate
Okay, okay.
Pepegas in the Republican.
Okay, one second.
It's just a bit.
Rob,
I'll just
Rob.
answer Maddie's question very quickly in this way. Just because you criticize Trump, I don't think that makes you a rhino. I'm talking about people specifically that actively engage with the corruption that was meant to oust Trump from power. People like Mitt Romney, people like Mitch McConnell, people like
this is conspiracy
Jeff
based.
Flake.
Okay.
No, it's not
Good.
conspiracy based, it's reality based.
Good.
But I understand, Maddie, that you wouldn't, it would be worthless to have a conversation with you about it because one, you wouldn't listen, and second, you're literally one of the dumbest people I've ever interacted with. So.
Literally. Oh shit.
Hey, she's smarter when it comes to
literally.
graphic design.
I know
Stop.
that was
Okay,
Establishment
okay.
Republicans probably saw Trump coming, and that fucking made him scared for
So
sure.
many
But this is the
feelings,
new
Rob.
normal.
Okay, we're gonna move on now to Cam Higbee.
Yeah, so I wanted to say something to Jeb like quite a while ago, so I guess I'll just bring it back to that. But first, I want to say, Maddie, laughing to your audience is not an argument. Also, so Jeb, you were talking about how like they consider this like whatever like these people did like an incitation of violence or whatever. You're talking about Trump and like Marjorie Taylor Greene and all these people, and saying that like there's some like utility in banning all these people from Twitter because it damages the party or whatever. We don't just like ban people from Twitter because they're political. Again, they're not like political opposition, but they're like politically damaging, right? We don't do that. You have to have like an actual reason. And the thing is, like, Trump didn't incite violence at any point, like whether it was in his speech going to the Capitol, while people right before people head to the Capitol, or on Twitter. You can look up the like Twitter report on why he was actually banned. The first tweet that they cited was the 75 million great American patriots who voted for me, America first, and make America great again, will have a giant voice long into the future. They will not be disrespected and treated unfairly in any way, shape, or form. That doesn't sound like an incitation of violence to me. Nothing he said was incorrect, right? 75 million people did vote for him, but more people voted for Biden. The next tweet was, to all of those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th. And Twitter rationalized this tweet as like a reason to ban Trump because it was a dog whistle that because he wasn't there, it was okay to bomb the inauguration. Doesn't make any fucking sense, right? Trump didn't get banned for any policy violation on Twitter. Neither of the tweets that Twitter cites as violations of policy were actually violations of policy, and they went on to actually admit that in their report. They just said that it might encourage disinformation, right? Even though what he said was actually true. In the first tweet, 75 million people voted
Hey,
for.
can I ask you a question?
So, like, me, CTV?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
What do
Oh
you
man, I haven't seen
think?
you in a while.
Yeah, no, man. Like, let's imagine this past year, Trump not got banned off Twitter.
Yeah.
Exactly what do you think the possible outcomes of that could have been?
Him not being banned on Twitter?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I noticed like a mass exodus of conservatives from social media after he was banned, not by choice, but rather by like administrative abuse of authority from like these companies. I think like the purpose of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act is actually to protect political discourse online and not allow companies to like censor political discourse. But unfortunately, they created all of these protections for the platforms that they thought would actually induce this ability to have political discourse and forgot to include protections for the users, which I don't have that much of a problem with Section 230, other than the fact that it fails to provide protections for the users that would allow.
So I don't know how we got off on that.
Yeah. No. So basically, I
Let's
think
just say, what's the effect of Trump not being banned on Twitter? What do you think would have happened post January 6th and beyond?
Yeah.
Right? Trump's
Yeah, I
not
think-
banned off Twitter.
Yeah,
he
let's get there.
continues to be able to fire out the rhetoric that he is.
Yeah, I think that it would have caused a lot of other social media companies and Twitter to not feel as though they had the ability to just censor any person they saw as political opposition, felt enabled to do that. And I also think that there's a possibility that we might not have a disinformation governance board currently.
Do you think there would have been any consequences?
I think there would have been. I think there would have been.
I just want to bring up
Sourcing a lot of social media stuff.
But hold on, he
think there
asked
would've
me
been-
something. He was talking to me about my thing with Kevin McCarthy. I wasn't endorsing him saying they should be banned on Twitter. What I was saying was I don't think he was making this authoritative statement they need to get banned off Twitter. I think it was more of a Twitter loves fucking banning conservatives. Can't they just take these guys off the platform? Like, can't they finally throw us a fucking bone by banning some conservatives off of Twitter? Like, they'll ban Trump for not inciting violence. He didn't do anything that broke TOS, but why won't they ban these guys who, again, with the tweets that they had access to and they were referring to, one of them said write their names down, which if AOC said that, if anybody on the Democrat side said that, we would call them out for fucking inciting violence.
One second. Wait. I think that would just exacerbate the issue and make it worse.
Okay, so
We decided we were going to ban people, but
get-
I'm not familiar with this, like taking names out. What is this?
Yeah, so there's a point to all this, right? Because we're not going to breeze past it. The point is that had Trump not been his personal account, the government account, right, for the president was not banned, right? It was just his personal account, and it was his personal account that he was using to fire off a lot of the shit that was just stirring shit for a lot of people, right? So if he had been allowed to do that, I think that giving the level of charge of not maybe necessarily, right, the populace as a whole, but with the government's response, that's the thing that I'm paying the most attention to. They put up fucking barricades all around the fucking Capitol. They marched out the fucking police and ran everybody the fuck off with smoke grenades and everything else. The government was charged for fucking war. And that's what you need to fucking remember, right?
So what, are you?
What? Ban Trump?
CTV, are you like advocating
I
that Trump?
think as
And
a
who
way
put
to
those pipe bombs there? Who put those pipe bombs there too? Right, CTV? Who did this? It was Antifa.
Yeah,
and it was
come on, Mick. If there was fucking pipe bombs at the DNC, get out of here.
And
there was pipe bombs at the DNC and the RNC. Get out of
They
here.
let my man Trump take the
Don't
fall.
even.
and they
Don't
fucking
even. Don't even.
Nobody was going to take
Okay,
Oh my
okay.
God,
Republicans
Okay.
must have
goes
put
to
the pipe
jail.
bombs because they were at
Okay.
the DNC, but they were at
Okay.
the fucking RNC too. Holy shit.
I
Okay,
would
so
like to ask CTV.
Use your power
where
of
he's going
deduction,
with
sir.
this.
Somebody always goes to jail. In this case, Trump with the Twitter jail, his ability to be able to continue that rhetoric that was obviously charging some people to extreme degrees was stopped. And as a result of the stop, it allowed people some time to be able to like go, what the fuck just happened? And it de-escalated the situation. At least now we've got people having more rational conversations instead of continuing to escalate towards, hey, it's time to throw over the fucking government and have an actual civil war here in the fucking country. Because there was a lot of people that was here that was charged for that fucking language.
I don't think that's a
Okay,
reason.
I'm
to
shocked. I'm
deplatforming
shocked
people.
to hear this. Right? Like, yeah. So I'll just say this. Like, I wonder if CTV and all these government officials were also interested in removing everyone that was talking about systemic racism and George Floyd when there were riots based on that. You would have thought that would have been cool. Everyone tweeting that, right? Like for Kamala Harris, for example, pushing that bail fund, she should have been.
I
What about
personally would
Russia
have the
collusion?
same charge against every single government official and any type of fucking riots that were being pushed out there that was leading to the charging of all of this fucking language and atmosphere that everyone was fucking encountered.
look at this.
You're
Communist
held to a
CTV.
higher
Systemic
standard.
racism,
Communist-
systemic
Wait,
racism,
wait,
systemic
wait, wait.
racism, systemic racism is real, and stolen elections aren't.
Doesn't matter.
Communist
Sure, sorting elections.
CTV.
over it.
Rob.
Okay, so I want we have like 13 minutes left, so I want to make sure everybody has closing statements. Can everybody, except for Gappy, because Gappy's on the list, and I promise I throw it to Gappy. Can everybody else, like whatever they want to say, like be ending statements, or is there anything else you?
Yep.
That's
Okay,
fine.
Gappy.
I can do an ending statements too.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're going to go into ending statements for this topic. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Hippy Dippy Roundtable once again. You will give your ending statements for this last topic and also shout out your channel. The Hippy Dippy Roundtable is every Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm going to throw it over to Cam Higbee. I would also like to let everybody know that the Burned Out podcast is coming back. It's going to be this Sunday. Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Cam.
Yeah, so I again, like, I don't think that, like, just because, like, a political figure might be like creating issues that cause other people to independently act on their own means that we should deplatform them, especially when they're not physically calling for incitements of violence and they're actually doing the literal opposite. I don't think that's a reason to deplatform people. There, again, like, this was Trump's personal account, but there's precedent. There's literally Supreme Court precedent for this. I think it was Knight v. State case, right, where they found that even politicians' personal social media accounts are still public forums, and that those it was about political or politicians censoring people, like, in their comment sections or whatever, but the court upheld, well, because they're a politician, they can't censor people, their platform is public, whatever, blah blah, it's a public forum. I think that you're just like trading off one issue for another. I think it's ridiculous. Trump wasn't banned for any policy breach. He didn't incite violence. He did the opposite. And again, like, getting back to, like, the main core issue here, we've got all these leaked recordings of McCarthy or whatever, independent of McCarthy's personal opinion. We've proven nothing. The call has proven absolutely nothing, right? Other than McCarthy has this opinion. That's all we've learned. So yeah, I guess I'll pass it on to whoever's next.
Yep, CTV.
You can find me twitch.tv/critically thinking veteran. Dylan the champ needs about 5-10 minutes after the show, if that's all right. For everyone else, thank you for your participation.
Sure. Awesome.
And I hope that we continue to have a great Hippy Dippy Roundtable.
Fantastic. I'm going to throw it over to Gappy.
I was just really disappointed that during this debate and throughout all the different topics that we had tonight, people were just throwing out random stuff without any sort of foundation for it, or just making, like, just outward, nowhere conspiracy level arguments. I think the big takeaway from this entire conversation is that voting matters as much as people feel like it doesn't. It 100% does. These are calls that prove that politicians are scared shitless when voters feel like they don't like them. In terms of shout outs, my name is Gappy V, not Gappy5. I stream over at twitch.tv/GappyV. I think I'm the only non-political streamer on this entire panel. I mainly play games and, like, react to stuff. We're going to do a little bit of react content, then we're going to finish David Cage's amazing game of Indigo Prophecy. So if you want to go follow, it would be greatly appreciated. We talk about politics every now and then, but this is mainly a zone for, I don't know, Giga Chads, I suppose.
Okay, I'm going to throw it
Read
over
articles.
to Half-Based.
I'm Half-Baked Takes. Don't really stream, but plan to some point in the future if my computer could not crash the minute I'm going on the Hippy Dippy Roundtable. No, I do find it funny that the right wing is going to, like, just destroy itself over one man and the kind of the sycophants that have kind of grown off of him. I really hope that we can move past that part and move back towards more traditional, like, fiscal conservatism and stop worrying about wedge issues. And I know that there are some value in it, but it seems like we get bogged down and then we can never have real conversations against lefties because they want to talk about other shit than CRT or whatever the fuck.
I'm going to throw it over to Jeb.
Yeah, so like people were saying, I think generally it was sort of a nothing burger conversation. It was pretty typical political strategy conversation. But when the big narrative for the GOP is that it's just the MAGA zombie party and everybody falls in line with Trump no matter what, I think it showed that there is reasonable attempts from leadership to discuss all options and even, talk about things relating to what Trump does wrong and what some of the more sycophantic politicians in the party for Trump do wrong. So in that essence, it made me feel a little better represented by, my California Republican senator, who I have not historically liked very much. I'm Jeb, Jebtan, Jebtan on Twitter or on Twitch, and then on Twitter it's Jebtan RIP. So go ahead and hit me with a follow. I only need like 9 or 10 more for affiliate, and I think this would be my affiliate stream if I had those followers. So check me out.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it now over to Maddie.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty obvious that the Republican Party are never big fans of Trump. They just stay close to him, try to stay on his good side in order to reap the benefits of his rabid fan base. Because as we've stated earlier, where we talked about the CPAC poll, he is still insanely popular among Republicans and the voting base. So it kind of makes sense. And it also just goes to show that you can never really know what the Republicans' ideology is for certain things, because they claim to care about, balancing the budget. But if you look at every single Republican administration going back till, like Nixon, I think it started with Reagan, you would think they were fucking allergic to balanced budgets. You would think a balanced budget murdered their family and sent them photos of it. Like, they run so goddamn fast in the opposite direction. And it's like, do you actually give a shit about that? Do you care? Who knows? And this, again, is just another example of us, like, having no idea what their actual ideology is beyond maintaining their grip on power. And, hello, I'm Maddie K. I stream on Twitch as MaddieCakes _. I'm on Twitter and Instagram as Madsmaru, MADSMARU. Thank you. This was very fun. And with some new people who I've never been on a panel with before. So I had a good time. I think CTV won, though, again.
Okay, we're gonna now throw it over to Mythic Politics.
I want to thank my esteemed panel mates for having a very robust and heated conversation. I think it was, although it must have been frustrating for Dylan, who I know is going through it. I see the life. This conversation sucked the life out of him a little bit over there in Poland. I think that it was still infueled with vigor in certain moments. But regarding the McCarthy calls specifically, I want to say that I did not hear fear and apprehension in those calls. I did not see the sort of malaise and apprehension that's representative of the nation about the electoral process represented in those calls. I heard people doing their job and floating out ideals of how much exposure they thought they had and what they were doing the calculus of what they should do to optically sanction some people who may be thought in the court of public opinion to have exceeded a threshold for incitement of violence or something like that and kicking out regular things. I didn't see anything extraordinary here. And what we can take away from this, from the rhetoric on the panel, is largely that the future of the Republican Party is people like Rob Noor, for better or worse. I think establishment Republicans are not going to be doing a whole lot other than towing the MAGA line and sort of that proto-fascist, neo-populist, right-wing populist teat was what they're going to be doing. And Jesus is a gay commie, and that we should get rid of student debt and definancialize the college system. And I'm Mythic Politics everywhere, but follow Rob Noor so he's someone to talk to during a debate.
Rob Noor.
Like I'm going to completely disagree with Mythics on his stance. I also think that everyone that was talking to their audience while people were going is a shitty thing to do. But let me say this, like, you should be happy that hopefully someone like me would be the future of the Republican Party. And let me tell you why. I think there are a lot of similarities between the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street. I think both sides, I just want representatives that I believe actually give a shit about the people they're representing. And I don't see that at the top levels of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. And I haven't seen it for years. So I'm willing to listen to people on the left, even ideas that I'm very much opposed to, such as socialism and other things like that. I'm willing to hear it if I believe that it's coming from people that actually want to help the constituents out. So many times I don't think that's the case when it comes. Let me just say a couple things real here. I can't believe CTV's take on this, which I think is that it was okay to ban Trump if it lowered the temperature. That's fucking insane. Getting rid of free speech getting rid of free speech in unwarranted ways, unjustified ways, because you think that there will be some sort of benefit is asinine. And we literally could see why, because the slippery slope is real. And we're creating a ministry of truth now by Joe Biden that will use that same argument and say, well, if we just ban people from talking, it will lower the temperature. But at least CTV called it out. Jeb, on the other hand, endorsed and embraced McCarthy, and then tried to walk it back when I pointed how asinine it was and how it's literally the exact thing that we should be fighting against, endorsing someone who is privately saying that why can't they censor more conservatives? Why can't they do that? It would be good for my position and my party to censor more people. I don't want Kamala Harris censored. I don't want AOC censored. I don't want any of them censored off these platforms, even though I despise some of the things they say. I guess that's where I differ from some of my conservative friends, but no hard feelings. I don't think that that makes anyone a bad person. I just think that it's why people like you should not be given reins of control of the party, or politicians that favor those sorts of ideas. It's incredibly dangerous. My name's Rob Knorr. I guess they bring me on here to piss everyone off. I think I successfully fought with almost everyone, but I had fun with it. No hard feelings to everyone. You can check me out on Twitch TV /Rob Knorr almost every weeknight, doing live streams, and Normal America with Rob Knorr on YouTube and other platforms.
Okay, thank you all for coming on, and I guess I'll talk to you after CTV. You all have a good one.
All right, Wowie, thank you.